But it was,
To the minutes?
it wasn't really correct what she said.
Yeah, it was,
It wasn't, or what I wrote, but it was that what she said wasn't
Ribbit?
accurate.
Yeah, it's in a hurry.
right.
Right, so why don't you just put that in
God,
the
your
record
wardrobe
instead
is
of as a
malfunctioning.
correction? 'cause
Yeah,
what
wardrobe
you-
malfunction.
You and Madonna or whoever else has those malfunction problems.
Good evening, everyone.
Hers is more.
Today is October 13th, 2016. This is a meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. We have old business and new business on our agenda tonight. But before we begin any of that business, I'm going to ask that everybody here at the board identify themselves. I will say that we have a full board present, and it may be that we have one or two members leave early. We will still have a quorum. I'm not sure when that will need to occur for members, but people have things, a couple of things that might come up outside of the meeting during the course of the night. We're not sure. So Jonathan, if we can start with you with identification.
I'm Jonathan Rourke, the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
David Pierce, the Selectman's representative.
Gala Breck, Recording Secretary.
My name is Barbara Griffin.
Philip Devanza.
Kimberly Peace?
Tim Redmond.
Jim Raymond.
Michael Conlon.
And Michael Conlon is a new father, so if he falls asleep during the meeting on your application, do not take it personally. It's simply how he's operating. All right, the first item on our agenda, we have one action item before getting to noticed business, which is the minutes of September 22nd. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with correction.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Um,
Do you need me to input a correction there?
Yeah, Kimberly, why don't you speak to your,
Yeah, and on page 7 of the minutes, they accurately reflect what I said, but what I said was actually backwards. What I said was we never expanded the 100-foot buffer to residential use, but that was actually backwards. What I meant is that the 100-foot buffer does not apply to a commercial or industrial zones. It does apply in the residential zones. So, my apologies for saying it backwards.
so that so that is offered for purposes of
Page 5.
clarification?
Said 7.
Sorry, page 5 of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, correct.
Phil?
Page 6,
Yes.
middle of the page where it said there are forms to buyer signs, it was forms to seller signs, stating that they have gotten all the proper permits and approvals on their property.
Do you have that, Gail? Anybody else with corrections to the minutes of that meeting? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining,
Abstaining, not present.
two abstentions, Michael and Tim. The vote carries. All right, there are some requests for waivers to be addressed that we will do in conjunction with applications as they arise. We have also received, in regards to the first noticed item on our agenda, and that would be map 4, lot 87-6. This is a notice public meeting hearing for a time extension request for the approved subdivision site plan application of Woodland Trust, applicant and Placid Woods owner, for a proposal for 2 lots to convert the property into 2 lots and to build 76 townhouse-style condominium units totaling 13 buildings. This property is located off Bog Road and Mountain Road. It is zoned R1. This has been continued from the August 11th meeting. Jonathan?
The applicant has requested to be continued due to some new information that they want to resolve with the engineer before continuing on with this.
And was that request received in writing?
It was received in writing.
All right.
They would like to go to the November 10th meeting.
Okay. So we have a request for a continuance on that application for November 10th. I will tell board members that staff communicated to the applicant that they did not anticipate a problem with this request, and accordingly, I do not understand that the applicant would have anybody here tonight. Do I have a motion in regards to the request to continue this map 4 lot 86-6 public meeting hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those is there any discussion on the motion? I'm not seeing any, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It carries. That matter is continued to the November 10th meeting. The next item of old business on our agenda is the matter of map 20, lot 16. This is a completeness review, site plan review hearing for a proposal to convert a 1,404 square foot existing garage and barn into an auto repair shop. The property currently has a real estate office along with a single-family home on the lot, making this a mixed-use property. This is the property at the corner of 114A and 114. The Century 21 office is in it. The applicant and the owners are JEM 443 Mast LLC. And this map 20 lot 16 parcel is zoned residential small office 2. This has been continued from the September 8th meeting. Jonathan, why don't you just run us through the history of this?
Certainly. The applicant has been through a couple times here requesting some site plan adjustments. Basically wanted to pave a portion of the area that's already gravel at this point, and they came back a couple different times with some revisions, and I think they've made some additional revisions to come to the board tonight, including removing the lift and some other landscaping that we asked them to address previously. I spoke with Mr. Shea about the changes, and it looks like they've made the changes that were requested. Everything seems to be in proper order at this point. Mr. Jones, I did speak with him. He was not able to attend this evening. He's one of the abutters. And he was happy with the set date for the removal of the lift. And also, we explained a little bit more about the question he had about a vegetative buffer and the slope and how it would be difficult to find mature trees and shrubs of that nature to actually completely block his vision from his property in the back. And we went over the plan, so he is aware. He apologized for not being able to make it this evening, but he wanted to just relay that.
All right, thank you. And is the copy of the plan that was given to us with our packet the same as what we have in front of us tonight?
That is the most recent. That is correct, yes.
Okay, always a good thing. All right, thank you. Well, having heard that, I'm going to hear the applicant. It sounds like Jonathan has given us a preview, and then we will reopen the public hearing. Mr. Shea.
Evening, my name is Raymond Shea from Stanford Surveying, and I'm here with John Hypo, the applicant and owner. And Jonathan touched on some of the revisions that we made since the last meeting about a month ago. I'll expand on them a little bit. The issue of removing the outside lift, we had agreed to that at the last meeting, where we put a note on the plan that it will be removed by December 1st. And I think we also put down the date of paving, because we had hoped to get an approval and then pave before winter. So we have both those dates on the plan. I think we had the paving date previously. We've also added a note, there'll be no outside storage of any automotive parts or accessories, note 18. We also addressed the board's concerns about excess amount of pavement and parking. So we've, I guess in the north part of the back lot, we eliminated some paved area and parking, so we've reduced the parking to what is required. I think the parking requirements are 12.1, rounded up to 13, so we have 13 parking spaces, and we eliminated any excess pavement in that area, still leaving room for emergency vehicles to be able to circulate around the property. Regarding the concrete pad, we're proposing putting the dumpster on the concrete pad and screening it, so that eliminates eliminates the ability to have a lift there, which is going to be removed, and there'll be no parking on it, so it's a location for a dumpster. It's a good location. Dump truck can come around and access it. The two overhead doors in the rear, Mr. Heichel has agreed to frame in the exterior of one of the overhead doors so that it's too narrow to bring a vehicle in. He's put a substantial amount of money into putting the overhead door in, and it can still be useful. as an overhead door, but if the width is narrow, then you can't get a car in. And that was a concern of the board, driving two cars into the two separate, what would be considered bays. So that's how we propose to address the two overhead doors in the rear. The board looked through the zoning minutes at the last meeting. There was a couple issues that caught their eye. One was, there was some reference to not having a front door in the barn. And the intent of that statement at the zoning board meeting was that the front door in the barn, which existed prior to the renovation of the barn, the front door would not be used to bring clients' vehicles in and out of the building. It would be, the rear door would be used. I think to eliminate an existing barn door, especially visually, you'd end up with just a solid big wall, unbroken wall of the barn. And again, it was there prior to the renovation of the barn. And I think for safety reasons, it's probably a good idea to have a couple accesses into the bay area. If there was any life safety issues and emergency personnel had to get in, they don't have to go behind the building, and they're not constrained to one access into the bay. So again, reading the minutes, you get a sense of one thing, but the intent was not to board up that door and have no door there. The other item which was discussed, that was in the minutes of the meeting, was the term overflow. This would be overflow business from the existing auto repair business which Mr. Heichel runs up the street. In a sense, I guess you could say overflow, but the intent was this would be a second location and a second bay for him to do auto repairs. The term overflow was used, but it's intended to be, and it was approved as a second location for his business. So that's basically the way we've addressed the issues that came up at the last meeting, and I think over the last 4 meetings, we've come a long way. You know, we understand the applicant may have addressed some things on the property prior to the application that may have slowed this process down a little bit, but we think we hope we've addressed them to the satisfaction of the board.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask the board members if they have any questions. Board members, do you have any questions, comments? Michael?
So it sounds like we're saying that we won't use the front door for moving cars in and out of
Correct.
during the use of it.
Right, and that
for
was the
repair.
intent of that statement at the zoning board meeting, but didn't come across that way.
Will the door be left open when repairs are occurring at any time? So we're not moving cars in and out, but we're going to leave the door open? Like in the summer or other situations that are not emergency related?
At most times, no.
No, most
I guess we'll
times,
say,
no.
the attempt will be to keep it closed. We understand the noise is an issue. Any loud repairs would bring noise out through that door. And the intent would be not to allow that to happen. You know, if it's a hot day and you're doing something that's not noisy, it might be nice to have that door open for ventilation. So I guess I hate to have a condition that door would never be open unless of emergency. But we understand the reason for keeping it closed. And if we intend on keeping it closed majority of the time to keep noise down from going out towards Master Road.
Okay. I think noise and appearance seem to be the
Yeah,
concerns
exactly,
of the
exactly.
of
The
town.
appearance, I think the door is a nice look door. I think closed, it looks nice. Open, obviously you get to look into the bay and the appearance isn't as friendly.
Sure, absolutely.
I got a list of hands here. Phil?
The other thing that was mentioned and was also in the ZBA minutes, it was stated there would be no auto sales.
Oh, well, I think we put that in the notes a couple meetings ago, just to
Right.
address that
Okay.
issue.
Okay.
Yep.
Just
Yeah,
Number 14, number 14, yes.
Yeah, thought it was there. Okay, Jim?
Well, it may or may not be material, but the ZBA came out with an order with certain wording. And I understand Mr. Shea saying the intent was, but we have to take the ZBA at its word. I don't think we have the authority to impose some different interpretation. And again, it may or may not be material, but for example, if it was for overflow parking or overflow use, and that's the term that was used. And I guess I'm a little troubled if we're supposed to find some different interpretation than what was presented to the ZBA and it decided. Now, again, we may conclude that the difference isn't material. I just don't think we can say, well, what the ZBA really intended was not what it said. So and the two areas that he talked about was overflow as opposed to a separate business use. I guess that was the main one. Now, the wording in the ZBA decision itself doesn't tell us much, so I don't know if it's inconsistent with the application. I just have that as a question, if we're supposed to be changing what the ZBA decided.
Thank you.
And the answer could be no, but,
I think everybody's interpretation of what overflow means might be a little different.
yeah, and,
I
we're
think that's
given...
what we're talking about. I'm not even sure that Ray was interpreting it the way I interpreted it
Yeah.
in the presentation that he made. So we might need to sort of work on that. Tim?
Thank you. Ray, when the notice of decision from zoning was handed down, we had a copy of the minutes that were presented to us to read some of the
Yeah, I think we looked over them last-
comments that
last
were made
meeting.
by the applicant, and I believe it might have been the applicant's attorney that
Correct,
represented him there.
correct, yeah.
There was a question brought up about noise, which is what Michael brought up earlier, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a statement made that you were going to add some extra insulation or something to the inside of the building as a noise
I believe that was in his statement,
noise
yeah.
reducing, has that been done in the building? Is the building finished on the inside already?
It's not finished, I don't believe, no.
So that would be something you'd be willing to follow through on as part of the,
Yeah, I plan on doing that to protect the neighbors from across the street from hearing.
I would like to say, Ray, that I believe that most of the comments that were addressed by the neighbors, you've covered them at this point. There's still a few that are going to be discussed, obviously, but you've done a lot. Thank you.
Just in follow-up to that, Tim, Jonathan, there was just a discussion of the building. We had a previous discussion about building permits on this. What's the status? Because for whatever reason, there were some things done before this application. What is the status of the building permits? We talked about this probably over a month ago now.
Yeah, I spoke with Mark Tessier this afternoon. He still has not heard yet. The building permit is still open. It has not been closed out yet, so he still needs to get in there and inspect the work that has been done.
So has there been any contact with buildings since we discussed this at our meeting?
There has not.
Okay, thank you. Kimberly?
Oh, sorry, just scratching my nose.
I thought your hand was up before.
Don't go to auctions.
Okay, the applicant liked it. All right, any other questions or comments on this? I'll go back to Tim and then Michael.
Thank you. Most of the residents that spoke at prior meetings on this subject were very concerned that this board would make a bad decision that they would have to live with for the rest of their time as neighbors to this applicant. So I want to be sure that whatever is represented by the applicant, whether it was at the ZBA or whether it is here tonight, is adhered to by the applicant in the future so that we don't have to turn the residents into the zoning police, and we don't have to recall this application in the future for reconsideration. So that's all I would just be very concerned with, that I took it pretty seriously when the residents said, the planning board owns the decision and we live with it. So I just want to be sure that we follow through on all the terms and conditions of what's been presented.
Right, and Mr. Heigl owns the property, so it's, you know, it's not just like a tenant that he's gonna, you know, renting in there, so he wants to play, he has tenants, and he has another business in there, so he certainly wants to keep the place running smoothly.
One of the neighbors brought up a fact that there was a bread truck in the yard. Now, was that a rental to an outside person, or was that just a one-time thing? Do you know what that was about?
No, and it's gone.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. So, looking at the minutes here, it was sort of intended or articulated to not be a primary business location and to be an overflow for the existing business location. And it sounds like what you just kind of said earlier, Ray, and I don't mean to misquote you, was that that's not kind of the intent of what you're trying to do here, that you're not necessarily intending this to be used only as an overflow. So, absent that kind of reconciling, you know, I really struggle to see this moving forward with that one piece still as an issue. It says, you're quoted in the minutes as well, John, and your attorney is as well.
Overflow, would you expect me to have a mechanic on call? And, because I remember that the board was explained to, I don't know how the minutes, maybe the minutes aren't accurate, but the board, the zoning board, one of the members of the zoning board actually said he's gonna hire somebody to work there. He's going to operate a business out of it. And, so it's very difficult, you keep bringing up the word overflow, and I've heard it several times, but I don't plan on having somebody sit there waiting for my 2 bays on Mass Road at Uptown Auto Repair to be full before I can send a car over there. That's not overflow. Overflow, I guess we were interpreting overflow as growth, and that's what my attorney was thinking when she said that. So it's really just to grow, because I can't grow from my 2 bays, but I do need 3 bays. So that's the overflow. It's not having a place ready and waiting, but can't use it, but need somebody on call, you know, sitting there waiting for me to need a 3rd bay. So it's a complete third, it's a complete entity. It's in itself, within itself, and you know, there may be something that I can send over there that is more specialized for that particular mechanic than the one that I have on Mass Road, where I'm at now.
So we're just talking about another location for the business, really.
Well, it is another location.
Right.
It's certainly not, you know, hey, can you come to work today? I've got overflow. I don't think any business operates like that, and not that I'm aware of anyway.
Sure.
So, no, it's certainly going to be on its own, but it's going to be part of what I'm doing, and, you know, I do own the property. I'm not looking to mess it up or be a bad neighbor. I don't think I have been anywhere else, and I don't believe there's any other complaints or any kind of things like that. My neighbor out back that you've talked to or has talked, I talked to him from before I bought the property, and he knew exactly what I was going to do the whole time through. It was a surprise for me, as maybe it was to be informed when I heard some of his concerns. But there was never a concern, and all the agreements were made with him verbally as we went through that process from before the purchase.
Can I just follow up on that? So how many conversations did we have with the abutter? I'm assuming we're talking about the abutter who happens not to be here tonight. So how many conversations were there with that abutter?
4 or 5.
Really?
I'm going to buy this property, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that with the barn, and I'm going to lift that barn up, and I'm going to put the bay out there, I'm going to put a parking lot out here, and I just want to run it by you as a neighbor. How do you feel? You know, what do you have any suggestions?
No, I didn't know. I just asked how many.
I didn't
That's
mean how
all.
do you feel, I meant how does he feel?
I understood that, John. I just wanted to know how many conversations you were representing occurred, because I'm not sure that the person who isn't here for the first time, would agree with that.
He
'cause
didn't, he didn't, and he said another number, but it was 4 or
I
5.
think it was one, yeah.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 times, and before I even bought it, because I didn't want to have a neighbor that I'd be battling with from before I bought it, because I know what Jan Bonneville went through with her condos. So I wanted to make sure that my neighbors and I were cool,
Okay, all right.
and it seemed to be no problem at all. I walked around to all the abutters, hey, how you doing? I'm going to do this over there, and the people across the street said, yeah, go ahead, sounds like a good idea.
All right, thank you. Tim, was that another hand or not?
No, I was scratching my nose.
My concern, just so if I can say, it's always difficult when we get plans with the ZBA approval, where what the ZBA has done is open to some interpretation. And particularly where it is a variance being granted for use that was not contemplated by the planning board in creation of the zoning ordinance. This use is not even permitted by special exception in the residential in this district. So I understand that the ZBA has allowed this, and we're going forward on this application. But I also know that not only are the terms of the ZBA decision, but the representations made to the ZBA in regards to obtaining that permit are part of the approval. So there have been 2 issues brought up. One about the front door. I have concerns about what we do with the front door issue, given that the ZBA approval for a use that's not permitted had a specific representation as to the door. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm looking at Ray Shea in the hope that he's got an answer to solve this dilemma for me. But if I've got a ZBA approval allowing this use that expressly said something about a door, and now I'm looking at a plan that does something different, I don't know that I can even do that. And then the other thing is this discussion about the overflow. I never took the overflow as a sporadic, you can't pick up your car till 4 because we have to bring the car. I never took it as meaning that. I took the representations at that meeting and what I've heard as the applicant has a business operating somewhere else. He'd like extra space because he can use it, and this provides him extra space for that off-site. I mean, not really off-site, it has its own off-site business. So when I read the term overflow, I read, quite honestly, the ZBA doing something that I don't even know how it does, which is making the use of one site contingent upon the continued use by the owner of another site. I think that's what it did. And so I don't even know how you would write a note on this plan to say the approval for use of a repair facility on this site, and I agree with Tim, you've done a lot of things to this plan that we've asked for. The approval for the use of this site as a 1-bay repair garage is contingent on the owner of the property also operating an automobile repair facility at blah-de-blah Mass Road, Goffstown. Because I think that's what the Goffstown ZBA did. I think that's what the attorney represented they were asking to occur. I think that's what the applicant asked to occur. And I don't know from a planning perspective how I do that. And I think that part of the reason you got the variance of an auto shop in the midst of residential, whether that's good or bad, is because of that representation. And so I'm just putting that out there. I never understood the overflow to be this sporadic, or John not to be able to schedule somebody there. But I don't know how I do that approval. And if somebody on the board has got an answer for what note 19 would be, because I think that's what the ZBA approved. So that's my dilemma on this. You've done the vegetation, you decreased the parking. I might want to
I'm thinking, but probably wouldn't ask for a note, that the parking is going to be limited to the designated spaces, because I think there's going to run into enforcement issues with that. But that's my dilemma, as I have looked at this application from the beginning, not the actual operation itself. Kimberly?
So is the question then, if they had come to zoning for a one-bay auto repair shop independent of the other shop, is that the question, would ZBA have looked at it differently if it was that, if it was not tied to another, like if they said, we're just gonna come in here and make an auto repair shop with one bay, do we feel like they would have viewed that differently?
I don't know, because that's not what they did, and they weren't asked to do it.
Okay.
But the discussion at the ZBA was clearly a discussion about additional use or overflow use from an operating business. And that is my issue on this approval. And as I stated at the beginning of that, that's why ZBA approvals of variances are very difficult, in my opinion, for planning boards to deal with, because our issues in regards to a site plan and whether or not the use of this site, because that's all someone looks at, is the plan, is something we can do. Tim?
So, in a non-legal way of representing this, it sounds to me like you're saying that the overflow business is contingent upon the primary business, Uptown Auto, continuing to operate. And should the primary location close, then the variance becomes null and void? Is that it in a nutshell?
That's what I think the approval is of, but when we were
I'm
talking
not
about
a lawyer, so I don't really know how to phrase that.
I'm gonna, Jim,
Well, ZBA didn't help us by just doing an approval without any specific conditions in it. Maybe somebody should teach them to do that. But the applicant and its lawyer did make representations, according to the minutes, which is what we have to go on, and those are considered part of the application. So you have to incorporate those into what the ZBA approved, and that's the problem, because the attorney made a representation of overflow from the main business, and as, according to the minutes, as did Mr. Heichel. So that's all we have on this issue.
Right.
The decision itself doesn't say much.
as to anything,
No, just grants
to the one door, to anything.
a variance.
Yeah, that's, because that's what they did. And that's why we need to look at the minutes. So I'm looking for a suggestion as to how to solve that issue for me in going forward to this plan. If planning board members have any other comments at this point or questions, if we could hear them, I do need to reopen the public hearing on this, at which point we will then have an opportunity to address any other issues. I'm not seeing any hands from planning board members, so I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public here at the meeting tonight who would like to address the board in regards to this completeness review, site plan review hearing for MAP 20, Lot 16. I'm seeing a hand, so come on down. I'm going to ask the applicant and Mr. Shea to just step down
Can we
for a
come
minute.
back when they're done?
Of course you can.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not being banished.
I wish I was. Just kidding.
Stop it, Ray.
Hi, if you could have a seat and give us your name, and we welcome your comment.
Good evening. Mary Philippi, P-H-I-L-I-P-P-Y. I reside at 28 Meadow Lane, which is in the neighborhood of I'm at a loss. Is it 443 Mass Road?
Right, okay.
And I also own property directly across Mass Road from Mr. Jones, who is in a butter. Family member lives there. And standing in the front yard, this 443 Mass Road is in clear view. The property we own is 456 Mass Road. I just want to reiterate some things that I've mentioned at previous meetings, that this variance, which I never agreed, thought was a good idea to begin with, but I was not in on the zoning board meetings. Not being a direct butter, I wasn't aware of it. So anyways, it was granted, and it was very specific about a small number of parking spaces, the one door in the back that the traffic would use for this business, the hours of operation, which was a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, again, in consideration of noise for the residents in the neighborhood, which, although I didn't like the idea of an auto repair shop going in, these were things that kind of made it more palatable. And then we came across some other things that sort of went crazy, away from the variance, and the lift, which now is agreed to be gone, which is great. The pad, it was discussed at the last meeting that the pad and the lift be both removed. I think that's a good idea. The proposal to put a dumpster there, it was agreed the dumpster was to be out of sight and in the building. The building was enlarged to, from the original barn, to include some office space, a bathroom, and for the dumpster to be inside. And I do have a concern that if the dumpster is outside, then possibly that, and with the two doors there, it might open itself up to perhaps two bays being used rather than the one. We talked a little bit at the last meeting about the residents parking in the front. There was a gentleman, I guess, that, or somebody that had a trailer or something. And I got a little confused about that, because my understanding was a car would come to be serviced. The auto repair bay is at the right side of the building. They would drive around to the back of the right side of the building, use that one bay door to enter, get the car serviced, and exit. So I'm not really sure what the Century 21 people and the residents, I mean, I don't have an issue with the parking. Sometimes you see that half-circle driveway a little bit congested, sometimes you don't. I mean, I don't have any issue with that. And I did like the idea of the going around the back of the building, the one bay door accommodating this low-volume business. So that was another thing we had talked about at the last meeting, about removing that second door. The proposal to frame, and I'm not sure I wrote this down right as I was listening to it, frame in the exterior of one door. I don't really understand what that means. I guess it's coming across that that means though the door would still be there, it would not be usable. I'm not sure, but I guess I would like to ask once again to go back to what the original variance was, and it was for one door. And the front door, is it Michael?
I'm Michael, yes.
I want to thank you for bringing up about the drive-through issue. Which is something, again, what I heard was the people will drive around to the back and they'll drive in and out of that one door in the back. So my thought was that front door wasn't going to be used as any kind of drive-through. And so you wouldn't be, as a neighbor or somebody passing by, you wouldn't be seeing the operation of the business because the door was open. I don't know how you would restrict someone from not opening the front door, but again, I think the use of the back door for the business purpose is a little bit more of an acceptable conclusion with that, because clearly with the doors open, the noise, and it's going to be an automotive repair shop. It's going to be noisy, and I was going to, because I hadn't heard anything brought up about the the insulation. I'm glad somebody brought that up too tonight, and would like that to happen too, because that would certainly help those of us who, might be out in our backyards during the day and, or front yards, and, minimize that noise as a distraction. I believe that was all that I wanted to cover. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to come forward and address the board at this time? I'm not seeing any further comments, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. Board, that means it's our time to consider this and resolve other issues. I do have a question for the board. That the public comment we just received addressed the hours of operation. The applicant has put that exact term as she described it as a note on the plan. They have been consistent in representing it was going to be a Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 operation. But I did just hear that she said the building was enlarged. Is the footprint of this building bigger than it was at the time of the ZBA approval? Is that what I just heard?
It sounded like that's what she said. I am not, I'll have to pull, let's see if I can find the building permit, but maybe, would the applicant be able to
Would the
address that?
applicant address that? I know it says that the building is 1,404 square feet, which I'm assuming is the square footage of the footprint. But is that footprint different than what was present for that building at the time of the ZBA approval? Pardon me? Yeah, come on down. Come on down. Mhm. I mean, I'll just comment for the record, I'm aware that the building was raised and it's higher than it was at the time. But it wasn't clear to me, and I'm looking at the drawing and I'm wondering whether maybe there was some footprint added out back. So that's my question.
I'm comparing visually the ZBA plan. There's minor jogs that are different.
Well, I guess the
Overall-
applicant would be
overall.
able of stating, since he owned the
Okay,
building,
yeah.
whether or not there has been anything poured or done to the exterior of the garage portion of the building located at 443 Mast Road since the time of the ZBA approval that has expanded the footprint.
No. If you see the picture, where's the picture?
The plan, you're talking about the plan.
Yeah.
That would move up.
Yeah, that plan, that jog out right there.
Ray, you gotta help me where that is.
The, if you compare,
Your proposed office, or
It's the building is exactly what that plan is.
there's a proposed office on this side, it just got pushed up.
So is
Close
the
to that.
answer to the question, the footprint of the building,
It's slightly different, but it doesn't sound like the square footage.
It added an office.
But that was proposed on
That
the
was
plan.
proposed on the plan.
That was proposed on the ZBA plan.
Is the one built 10 by 12
was
as
there a
well?
representation anywhere in the minutes that there was gonna be an expansion of the footprint of this building?
it's on the plan there.
This plan was pretty, you can't tell what's on that plan. There's no
I-
dimensions, there's no nothing on that plan. We
Well-
talked about the fact this plan was very hard to end. The application, as we're looking at it, doesn't comply to that plan in a number of aspects, so.
Right, I think during the, again, I wasn't at those meetings, but I believe through the process of the zoning hearings.
Yeah, I know
it was-
you weren't.
It was changed from two bays to one bay, the use. And we've kind of touched on the ZBA versus the site plan before.
Dimensions on
I
it.
don't know if, there was no specific size listed.
Huh?
Let me see it.
That there are dimensions on the plan. It was a 10 by 12 proposed addition
From the zoning plan.
on the zoning plan.
Number what?
It says 10 by 12, proposed office. It's got a little block with an arrow pointing to that checkered spot.
I have a question. Reading that by Mark
That
Tessie and Mark
shape's
Fitt.
different than this shape.
Yeah, the shape on that plan and what I'm looking at today is different.
The office got moved to the back of the building.
Okay.
Because it was too close to the house where it was
You had to
originally
have more of a
proposed.
separation.
Needed more of that separation, so it was moved.
Which is why the issue is that, that this was not, that we talked about with plans in front of ZBAs, because fire department isn't looking at them for separation or driveways, and so the plans are not the same. Is there any was there any representation during the public hearings in the ZBA that the footprint was going to be expanded? I don't recall a thing.
It's on the plan that was presented to them. This is the ZBA plan. And we talked last, the parking requirements on the plan were wrong, so it was, and I don't want to get
No,
into
well,
the-
yeah, no, you're
I
getting,
don't want to get into the
Side.
fact that this is an exhibit for a change of use, but it very closely represents what we're proposing now after eliminating some paving. So whether the addition got moved or shifted up the wall because the fire department wanted more separation, I don't know that materially affects the ZBA approval.
Okay, David, thank you.
Okay. I'm basically happy with the conditions or the notes that have been made to the plan to date. And I'm looking for two additional notes to be added. One is in line with what Tim just made, that the applicant wants to use this facility contingent upon the operation of a primary facility. And the note ought to say something like what Tim was proposing. Should the primary facility close, then the use of this barn as a repair shop disappears. If Mr. Heichel sells this property to a new owner, the new owner does not have this board's right to continue repair shop. So I would be happy with something towards what Tim was recommending as an additional note. And secondly, in a previous discussion here, it was mentioned there would be no signage
Correct.
on the barn, and I think that would be an appropriate note on this plan.
No additional signage.
On the barn, I think you said, Ray.
Well, there's a signage for the, all right, yeah.
On the barn.
Right.
so I think the representation that was made was that there'd be no additional signage for operation of the
For this
for the
business, right,
repair
right. And there's
business,
signage
right?
for Century
Right.
21s and things, so, but yeah, there's no,
Because you
no
have the Century 21 sign.
proposed signage for this business.
Michael?
It's- Have we ever done a contingent use like that before, historically?
Let's try it. There was a sign.
Not opposed to it, just curious about historics.
I'm not aware of any, I don't know.
Well, the foundation for our approval is the CBA decision. So if we're building on that base, it's fair to incorporate what we think are the conditions of what the ZBA approved. And if,
Right.
if we're wrong, I hate to say you can appeal and go back to the ZBA for clarification, but we have to base it on what we see in the record. And that's what we're talking about, whether the record is right or wrong, I don't know, but that's what we
Are there any other comments? Tim?
So, on the topic of the front door on the barn, there was an existing door on that barn, I believe, when
Correct.
the barn was taken in. If the issue is that vehicles should not be driven out the front door, you could certainly put bollards in front of the door to prevent vehicular traffic from moving out the front of the building, yet still have the availability for fire safety or for ventilation or whatever you may need. So I don't know what the representation was from the ZBA's point of view, or on how we have to consider it, but if you wanted to restrict traffic from moving out the front door, you could place bollards in front of the door.
Could we just change note 15 to continue with, which shall enter/exit from the back or from the rear? That seems to, without putting bollards up, I mean.
I've got a, yeah. I've got a solution. The four-post lift that's on the pad is going inside, and on the front of it, it has things that you can't drive over. So,
By
well,
default, it's not
wouldn't be
going to be
able
able
to
to
You can only
happen.
come in from one end of
you
it.
can only come in from one end of it, and so I'm gonna take that and put it inside. And the bollards look like,
No, I understand.
you know,
They don't look
Yeah,
good.
I'd rather
like a
have the
jail.
note than the bollards.
I want like a, I don't want a place
The
like
appearance of a barn.
I'd like it to look like a barn,
I'm trying to accommodate
not a,
rail trail.
Thank you.
That's a state-approved bollard, though.
That's true.
All right, they're completely
Federal.
different. All right, any other questions or comments on this application? We have heard this now a few times. I will tell you, this does appear to be different plan than what we first saw, with some more detail and conditions. We've heard public comment. Board members have had questions.
We just, maybe it was stated and I didn't hear it, but I know there was some changes, proposed changes on the landscaping, but,
Well, we had proposed those the last time.
Yeah, they
oh,
were
were they
here
is it the same?
Correct.
Oh, okay,
correct,
no,
yeah.
no, that's fine, that's fine. When I went through this and read it, I thought there was some additional, that's, okay.
Well, committed issues,
All right.
conditions,
So, and it would appear that if the board was to go forward, that the applicant has agreed to add to condition 15 that the vehicles will enter and exit from the back. There was also some discussion and appeared to be agreement that, and it was previously stated, that there would be no signage for the automobile repair operation. And there was some discussion on operation of the building as a business. Tim?
So with the notes that we're talking about, are we going to meet the zoning board of adjustments variance conditions, or are we still tripping over some?
Well, that's good to us to interpret the approval in the minutes, I think. Jim?
Well, as I said, the ZBA did not make findings or conditions. There's discussion by ZBA members, but their discussion isn't part of their decision. That's just discussion. What is part of the application are the representations made by the applicant and its representatives. Those we look at. I don't think you can look at discussion among board members, because unless it's incorporated into the vote.
Right.
I wish they would do it more clearly, but they didn't. Oh, well. And that favors the applicant, right?
I think the only other thing that I've heard that might have been addressed at ZBA that's here was the trash. I know at our meeting, there was a representation that the trash was going to be inside. I can't remember what the representation was at ZBA. The applicant is now proposing to have it outside with a fence around it. I just want to put that on the record because that is a change.
I'd suggest that's not a material change, because it meets our standards. I'll hang them up on that.
Okay.
Looking for a motion?
Right, unless somebody's got another comment, I think it's time for a motion on this application.
Make a motion to approve, subject to the conditions precedent, 1 through 15, as well as the additional notes we have listed here tonight, which are no sign on the barn,
Add number 15.
add number 15, to enter and exit from the rear. And then note number 19, the overflow business is contingent on the primary business, Uptown Auto, continuing to operate. Should primary location close, the variance becomes null and void.
And before I take a second on that, Jim?
Well, I don't think we can say that the variance
site plan.
can become.
Site plan.
Oh,
Site plan,
Well,
because
but the site plan can.
Okay,
And
then
we're-
the
and we're
site plan.
basing it on the ZBA's decision.
Okay.
I
I
think,
thought about that after I wrote it
at
down.
least in our minutes, we should catch the two. We're basing this on the ZBA decision.
Now I'm completely confused.
Well, no, it's, if we're basing it on compliance with the ZBA decision, including that it be used, now, if we're going to impose that as a separate condition of our own, we can. But what I'm hearing is that's our interpretation of the ZBA variance, so therefore we're incorporating it into our,
Right. Into our approval, okay.
sort of a metaphysical difference. You can-
Yeah,
you know,
okay,
sorry.
that was a little too metaphysical. And it was just,
Yeah.
before I take a second on the motion, was the representation about sign on the barn / garage, or was it a sign for the operation of a business out of that garage? Because would the applicant then be able to do a sign somewhere else on the site for the business?
It was the latter.
I think it was the latter.
Pardon me?
All signs.
Yeah, there was
That's right.
representation for no
Okay, so
signs.
the motion that I heard said sign on the barn, I just
Sorry.
So
wanted
there'd
to.
be no
clear-
sign of the
Amend that.
property.
There'd be no
No
sign
sign.
on
No
the
sign.
property
Okay.
for it.
We agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I thought so, that's why. Michael, did you have a further, all right, any other, do I have a second to that motion?
second motion.
Been moved and seconded. I'd just like, as a further comment for the board's consideration, it was my understanding that there was a representation that one of the two outside doors was going to be framed in so that it was
Reduced in size.
reduced in size so that a vehicle would not be going in and out of it. And we're not showing doors on this plan, which frankly makes me a little uncomfortable, but I think that needs to be a part of this approval because that goes to the building process, which is ongoing.
There is a note that says only one vehicle at a time will be allowed in the garage barn.
Yeah, but this was an issue in regards to the two doors
So
out
do we add
there.
a condition that the,
So do we add it as note number 20, or do we add it as?
Well, I think it's more a condition for the building permit
for
than it
of our
is
approval?
for the occupancy than it is for a plan, right?
So we would add that as a condition that
Right.
one of the rear doors would be reduced or framed in to prevent vehicular access.
Right.
Okay.
We should be also add another for the insulation to be completed on that same thought.
the building permit?
Yeah, that was that was part of the ZBA, so I guess you could consider that's part of the ZBA conditions that we have to fulfill.
Well, I'm not sure that Mark is going to be pulling the ZBA approval
Whatever,
for
yeah, I
a
mean,
building
that-
permit,
you can add
so
it.
why
That
don't we
was in-
add
that
it
was-
just to a condition, not on the plan?
That was part of the minutes, Ray. It wasn't a
Oh, okay,
condition of
okay.
your variance.
Okay,
It was just a discussion within the course of the meeting and representations made by the applicant and the attorney.
So we're adding that as a condition, but not on the plan.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion to the motion that I'm taking as amended and the second as accepting that amendment? Thank you, Michael. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously.
thank you very much for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda tonight is an item of new business. This is map 12, lots 14 and 15. This is a completeness review, subdivision hearing review for a proposed lot line adjustment between two lots. These are the lots, map 12, lots 14 and 15. The property is on Montalona Road, and it's owned by the estate of Martel. This is zoned agricultural. In our packet, board members, this begins on page 11. This, as stated, is a new application. There are no requested waivers.
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
Madam Chair.
May I
I thought, okay, I just looked at this and I'm like, wait a minute, but I read what I'm given, like a good chairman, so,
Do you need
hold
a
on.
copy of?
Hold on, I think our planning administrator is going to address that. Tim?
Prior to beginning this application, I need to excuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight, Tim. Jonathan, why don't you bring us up to date on this application, which I've started to address completely in error, so go ahead.
We did receive a request recently, and the request actually asks for a waiver from the Development Regulations, Section 3C, Item 7, bearings and distances, 17 topographic map, and 30 wetland delineation for the resulting parcel of 12 to 14.
Okay, I'm assuming,
That's what's on our table today.
Yes.
yeah. Okay. Before we address that along with the application, Jonathan, why don't you take us through this?
This property is located off Montalona Road. It was part of the Real Martel estate, and to summarize, basically what they're looking to do is the property, there's 2 parcels right now, and what they're going to do, they're combining a portion of the parcels together, and it's going to be bequeathed, I guess, to the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, and 5 acres of that will include the existing home and some of the structures to be left to the heirs. If that's correct. There is a access road that will be not for public use. It'll be just for the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forest to access the property for stewardship of the lands. And it looks like the main parcel will be roughly 134 acres. That's pretty much sums it up.
Okay.
So
Jim?
is it going to be deeded to the?
It's been bequeathed.
By separate parcel, not an easement, but an actual
Yes.
fee interest?
Yes.
And it's going to be 12-14 and parcel A in total?
I can bring you up to speed if you
Yeah,
want to
if
do
you-
an
All right, why don't
introduction.
we get this on the table, please, board members, before we proceed?
I'm going to move that we find this application is complete and that's the regional impact.
Second?
So it's complete with the waiver? All right.
Oh, and we can accept and then, and reserve judgment on the waiver as we get to the
So
merits.
accepting the waiver for, we're going to take the waiver for acceptance purposes only. All right, thank you. And Kimberly has seconded that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It carries unanimously. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot that step of acceptance.
Okay. We'd be happy to hear the application.
Okay. Good evening. My name is John LaFave. I'm here with Tamlin Goslin. Tamlin is the executor of the will of Real Martel. He has 2 parcels of land, or had 2 parcels of land, 12-4 and, 12-14 and 12-15. He had conversations prior to his passing of leaving land to the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forests. And he also wanted to give 5 acres to his caretaker. And so to resolve the issue from the will, because there's 2 parcels, we're going to do a simple lot line adjustment, giving 5 acres in the front with all the improvements as one tract, and the rest will remain in conservation with the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forests. That's it in a nutshell.
Questions from board members? We have 2 sheets for this lot line adjustment plan. It is the second sheet where you see the 5 acres that's being essentially carved out of what was viewed, I'm sure, as one large parcel. I want to just point out on that second map, if you could please, where this parcel is we're talking about and what structures are on it.
Okay, so on the property, there is the main house, and the majority of the rest of the buildings are all for farm use. There's a garage for farm tractors, what have you, hay barn, livestock barns, silo, but all the improvements that are with the house are all included in the 5 acres. Once you pass this line, it's just fields of forest for the rest of the 134.
Questions? So I just wanted to clarify, it was with the improvements that are on it, the 5 acres. I thought you said without improvements, and I
Oh,
thought
I'm
there were
sorry, I may
buildings on
have,
it.
but no, with the improvements, yes.
My hearing at this point. Jim?
I just want, I asked the question, I wasn't sure. So is 1214 already owned by the Forest Society, and this is,
From the bequeath, yes.
okay,
It has not been deeded to them.
but it's going to be,
It's going to be.
and 1214 is going to include parcel A, and then,
Yep.
because when we approve this, are we creating a lot with no frontage? So we'd have to make a condition of the approval that it's not a buildable lot, which is consistent with the intent. I think we have to expressly include that in our approval.
No frontage exists at this point. We'd just be increasing the lot
Well,
size.
that's right, but,
Yep.
but if it's not a buildable lot, then we've done that, so we'll do it again.
If I can ask, you did mention that there would be access by road to, that would not be open to the public, to the
Correct.
society? Where's that going to be?
So, in between the two barns right here, there's a woods road between two stone walls that goes out to the back pastures. And a lot of people in town remember using the property when they were younger for sledding and what have you. And over the course of the years, people have used the property, trashed it, stole stuff, what have you. So Riel put up a gate. The gate exists. It's probably 100 feet from the road. And it's not much of a gate, but it's simply to stop anybody from going up there and dumping trash or what have you.
Right.
And they're willing to let the society utilize that access road should they need to go up there, mow the fields, do timber harvest at an occasional time, for that sole purpose, but not to use it as a public access.
May I ask a question?
Yep,
I assume
please.
the Forest Society has accepted
Yes, they have.
they're picky now.
Questions?
Just one question, and I'm not clear in my mind. When you look at that map, the parcel on the left side of the two stone walls that we just discussed, is that part of 1214?
Yeah.
Yes. You can actually go to the sheet one, get a better picture of it. Because of the size of the plan, we had to do different orientations. But this is all 12-15 right now currently, and we're simply taking the line from up here and sliding it right down the parcel. So it's got the same width that it had, it's just the back lot line is just sliding down to this point. And all this land will then be added to 12-14.
And so the question, I think the question is begging an answer that says on the second map, the hatch marks which delineate the proposed access for the Conservation Society is not splitting a lot. It's
No.
just simply going down the
It's an
center
easement.
of the lot.
Yep. It's an easement over a farm road that exists.
Michael?
So the easement will overlap with the driveway?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a driveway that's there, and that's one of the conditions too, because the society needs to contact the owners, which would be Sarah Gorman, who has bequeathed the 5 acres. They'll need to make contact with each other should they want to use, coordinate
Yeah, right.
access.
Right, okay.
And they want to leave it that way, because, I mean, that's their driveway, that's their parking also. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from board members? Bill, did you have anything? David?
Occasionally, I hear the board talk about regional impact. Well, this is on a town boundary, so explain to me why we examine regional. I mean, is there a regional concern here because we're on the town boundary?
It doesn't affect schooling or traffic or anything of that nature.
Thank you. I'm just learning.
That would be one of the factors, I would suppose.
Well, no, we have to notify them if it did.
Yeah, that's the issue with the
Statute.
regional impact, so, on a border.
But Manchester never notifies us of anything, so.
Well, wait, be nice, we have
but-
actually
but-
response from
except-
Manchester regarding notification.
Except today.
It's the first, yeah, really, I was like, wow, excuse me, we digress from
That's
your,
okay.
your application. All right, are there any other questions or comments on this? So my understanding is that, based on the representation to this board, staff has recommended, that we approve this site plan, subject to our standard conditions, and the applicant is aware we would also have a condition that should, I believe, probably added to the plan, that the resulting 1214 is not a buildable lot.
Yep, sure.
There were some fire department comments. Do we need to make those notes?
I'd like to actually address those.
Okay.
So,
Fine.
if you don't mind, yeah, the only comments I had were from the fire department. Well, there was one from the DPW to show existing culvert, which is fine, show that on the plan. But the second one being from the fire department, asking that the gates be located 30 feet off the roadway to allow vehicle accessing the site to be able ability to get off the road while operating the gate. It currently is 30 feet plus, so I don't know that comment needs to be there. It
It
also
would
says,
appear that many of our fire department comments are standard, so
Okay.
don't take it personally.
and
As
that's
to
why.
your application, I know
Okay.
you're not taking it personally.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm just reading them as I got them. The second one saying if the gates are locked, locks must be in cooperation with Goffstown Fire Department to provide emergency access, almost as if they're under the belief that it's public property, and this is private. So I don't know that lock, they need to have a Knox lock on the property for the fire department.
I think that the theory is that if they need to get a tanker truck back there for fire protection, I think that's the theory. The practical reality is if they need to get back there, they're running through your gate. Though Chief O'Brien didn't hear me say that. So that is a standard comment that we get. We don't usually make that contingent on our plans, and I don't know whether any board member will ask it to be. Is there any other concerns by board members in regards to this application? And if, we have to deal with your waiver request, could you please address the waiver request?
Sure. Have you all had a chance to review the waiver request? All seen the copy?
Why don't you run through it while board members are looking at it?
We're asking for waivers from the development regulations, section 3C, and there's 3 different items. They would be the bearings and distances, the topographic map, and the wetland delineation, only for the resulting parcel that will remain in conservation. Reason being for these, the 5 acres that's coming out, we have shown topography, we have done wetland delineation, we have done building setbacks. The note on the plan stating that this will not be a building lot. It would be unnecessary to then have to put topography and wetlands and to show how the future development would be on this parcel, because it's going to remain in conservation. So we believe that the strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Thank you. Questions or comments from board members on the waiver request? I believe we did something very similar for a parcel recently before this board in the same neck of the woods.
I'd move that we grant the waiver.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously. Thank you. Are there any motions on the application
We
itself?
have to take public comment.
Oh, excuse me, I apologize. I'm hearing the society, and I think it's the public. At this time, I will open this meeting to public comment. Is there any member of the public here who would like to make a comment on this application? Come on up here. We're watching you, don't take it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take it.
My name is Carol Witcher. I live at 127 Montalona Road. My driveway is directly across the street from Real Martel's driveway. I've lived there for 30 years, and Real was a wonderful friend of mine and many of our neighbors. Shortly before he went into a nursing home, he invited me over to his house, and he told me that he wanted his property to always be given to conservation. He never wanted it to develop. He understood that. His wife and son had died, and he didn't have any immediate heirs. I made some phone calls for him, but was told by several places, because of his age and the fact that he might go into a nursing home, they weren't really willing to make those quick arrangements. I made some phone calls today to the New Hampshire Society of the New Hampshire Protection of Forests. I think that's what it's called. They have no record of anything being definite with this proposal. I had to speak to 3 people before someone was called on vacation, and this person, her name is Lauren Stewart, said that there had been a brief conversation with the person who wanted to have this set forward, but there were huge questions on their part of access. It would be considered conserved property with no public access, and the only access they would have to it would be going through somebody's property, and they were not in favor of this happening. So when I read on the map that I was sent, I read the name of the society, and I said that to the people that I talked to today, and they said there was nothing finalized with them regarding this. So I think that Real's wishes to make this property conservation property and saying things that aren't true is a real smack to his memory.
Thank you.
They were aware, this gentleman was aware of the conversation. This woman said that they were aware of the conversation, but nothing was finalized. And there was a big question about access. The driveway right across from my street was his driveway, and I looked on the map and I wondered how anyone would have access to that conservation property, and whether they were considering putting the driveway right through the conservation property, and the people I talked to said that they would never approve of anything like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who'd like to make a comment on this application?
I'd actually like to address those.
That you're not addressing it as a member of the public, we'll address you as an applicant when we're done. Do I see somebody down there? Come on down, if you could join us at the table and state your name for the record, and we'd love to hear from you.
My name's Brandon Bird, and I own 120 Montalona Road, directly next to Mr. Martell's property. I talked to him many times about the conservation, and that's what he wanted. My biggest thing is I can't see the property lines from over there. So now I want to know if my property is abutting conservation property, or is it
Which parcel you said, 120?
I think you're abutting the house, you're up on Montalona Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can show you right on the map. Mr. Bird.
Yeah.
Yep. See right here.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the second map shows it better. The second plan sheet.
Yes.
And I apologize to members of the public. You know, it's nice for us to see him present the plan so we know what he's talking about, but you don't get to see it back there, so we haven't quite solved that problem.
Your property abuts.
Yes, yeah.
12-16.
Right here. Real Martell's house. So it's a house, there's the barns, locations, and then you go up to the back where there's a stone wall. There's 2 different lots.
Yeah.
There was a road right here you guys access from. So,
Yeah.
so your abutter to the north has a stone wall behind their property. As if that stone wall carried across, after that line, all be conservation.
Okay. All right, so I'm still abutting
So will Mr.
Nothing's
Bird's,
changing for you.
You won't be abutting the conservation area. You'll be abutting the 5-acre parcel.
Okay.
Okay.
That was really all I really wanted to know what was going on. 'cause
All
I
right,
can't
thank
see
you.
from that thing, so. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry about the view. Does anybody else have a comment or question about the plan because you weren't able to see it? All right, I'm not seeing anybody else here at this time. I'm going to close the public comment then and go back to the board to resolve any remaining issues. The applicant is back at the table to address comments or questions from board members. Jim?
Well, if it, and I don't know if it's true or not, and the applicant's representatives can just tell us, if there is a question on whether the Forest Society has accepted this.
There is not.
Yeah, okay, just let me finish this, because there's some, I will say from my own experience, sometimes they're difficult to deal with. We don't care as long as it's used for a conservation purpose. We care, but there's a lot of conservation trusts out there, so if we approve it subject to its being donated as a conservation trust, I don't think we care beyond that. If you can answer the question, that's great, but I don't see it as critical to our decision.
I can't answer that question. The society has been intimately involved with this planning, including
They have
participating in the wording of the deed. They have a contact, I have a contact, months. They're completely aware and completely on board.
And I actually included in the application the section of the will and last testament, which shows that it was bequeathed to the Society Protection of New Hampshire Forests. The
name.
contact is Brian Hotz. The society in Concord has a lot of employees. They may not all be familiar with all the properties. They own a bunch of land. Brian had actually walked the property with Mr. Real Martell, showed him what he wanted to do. He wanted to keep it on to conservation. One of his wishes was that the fields be returned to the way that they were. They're starting to grow up. It made him depressed. They were going to honor his last wishes by using that access to go up there and to mow the fields. The society has been on board all along. There's no doubt about that. To hear otherwise is a surprise to me. It may be just that because the Concord office was not familiar with that particular property, with who they spoke with, would be one thing. I wish Brian was here tonight. So, he was notified.
Thank you. Any other questions of board members? I just have a procedure, and I'm looking to Jim to answer my question. I have
Dentist appointment, I gotta go.
yeah, my second board member about to leave. The sheet 2, note 1 says the purpose of this plan is to adjust the common lot line, and the resulting lot 1214 has been bequeathed to the Society of the Protection of New Hampshire Forests.
Which means they technically...
I understand what bequeathed means. So my question to the board member is, what does that do for us on this? Because bequeath doesn't have any real standing from a planning standpoint. And I'm doing a lot line adjustment, creating no access when there's nothing before me that makes this plan approval contingent on notification of the appropriate approval of the easement and acceptance of the parcel. It's not that I have a problem with the concept, but we're creating a lot with no access, and I can see a lot of people with parcels that need to comply with the open space ordinance coming in and saying, it's bequeathed to the PLRC, the society, and so therefore, I'm doing a lot line adjustment because they're gonna get it. We say, oh, great, and they've now essentially gotten around some of our regulations by manipulating the lot size to a different buildable area. And I'm not saying this applicant is doing that. I'm just saying, I don't know what we're doing right now. What I've got in front of me is somebody wants to do something, and it will be really nice when it happens.
Well, The difference here is it's the estate that's did the application. And property that is specifically bequeathed or devised as real estate goes under the will. You don't need a deed. And if it's a fee interest, it's being conveyed rather than a conservation easement. The probate acts to convey title. What's different here is the parcel that's being conveyed did not exist as of his death. We're creating it. So that's an interesting question of whether the will can operate on a parcel that doesn't exist. But by approving this subdivision, I think we're allowing it to. I just want a specific condition in the approval that it's subject to its being transferred either by will or by deed to the Forest Society.
Which would be a precedent of a condition of approval, I would think. Because why would I have a recorded plan for creating a lot that never
Well,
gets transferred?
I suppose, yeah, Roslyn can correct me, but until the estate is closed, it doesn't happen. I mean, it's, in theory, property transfers on death, but the lot wasn't in existence. So, may I ask her a question? Is this estate going to be closed shortly? Is this going to remain open for?
Will remain open till all the business is completed. It's not even subject to close until the spring.
Okay, but a matter of months and not years.
Correct.
So at that point, is that when the estate's closed, we then treat this transfer as being completed?
Yes, we will, as soon as we're able to, we will be deeding the property now
You are
before
going
the
to deed
estate
it.
closes.
You are going to deed it? You're going to?
Yes, we're going to
well,
deed
that
it.
answers the question
Yes.
then. If it's going to go under a deed and not under probate, we don't have to wait for the estate to close. So we can make it subject to the deed being transferred, or a copy of the deed filed or something, if you want evidence. I'm less disturbed than you are, I guess.
That's probably true in general, Jim.
I don't think so.
And with that, then there'll be a mechanism for, should whoever ends up with this parcel has to have on that deed the knowledge that there's a permanent easement.
But it's an ownership, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I would put a condition, as I think about, it'll be transferred by deed for conservation purposes, and it's not a buildable lot. If we say that, then we've covered it. So the Conservation Commission can't change its mind. I mean, the Forest Society can't sell it 2 years from now.
Unless they were to sell it to another conservation society.
No, can't sell it and put up a Walmart.
It's in conservation
Yeah.
permanently. The note addresses that.
I guess I just don't understand why anybody just can't come in and say, this is what I'm gonna do, and I wanna do a lot line adjustment, because that's essentially what we've got. Right?
Yeah, so what? They can't use it for open space, not part of their lot anymore.
If they were under separate ownership and somebody wanted to buy that piece of land, it would not be an
That
issue.
raises the question of exactly what I was talking about people doing.
But we track back to the mother lot.
Yeah, but you can convey property to any entity. I'm just more naturally suspicious and cynical at this point than Jim.
I included a copy of the will and testament in the application.
See it.
I don't think we got a copy of it.
Do you have the copy there? The copy
I'm not
have-
examining anybody's estate.
Yeah, that's why we didn't.
I actually blurted out all the matters that didn't pertain to anything or no one's business besides the
I
will
don't
and
have a
testaments.
problem
Yeah.
with what's here. I think it's premature, and that's why I have an issue with it.
And we also
I understand
abut-
what you're trying to do.
Yeah, we also abut existing conservation land.
In the other town. The town of Goffstown.
The town of Goffstown owns this parcel.
Yeah.
It's a conservation. There's also the Piscataquag Land Conservancy, which abuts it
Right.
as well. So this is simply adding more area to existing conservation land.
With no access.
No access currently exists as it is. There is access from the other parcels, should we
Right.
wish to use it that way. The problem lies with this lot being here, with the existing improvements, having the public come across them for liability would be an issue. Therefore, they don't want that to have that for an access. And the fact that people have abused it over the years would be another issue too.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments put from the board? I see Jim is writing. Any motions from anybody? We have a number of conditions precedent that have been presented by staff. We have discussed the fact that 1214 will be noted as not a buildable lot. Motions with those conditions or others?
I'll kick it out there just to get the ball rolling. I'll make a motion that we approve, accept the plan with, subject to the conditions precedent, 1 through 4. And what else have we talked about? Note that the,
Add note 11 probably to sheet 2. To the buildable lot.
right, so that the parcel will, parcel 12-14 will not be a buildable lot.
I think that's one of the real issues, is just noting that it's not going to be a buildable lot and that it's going to remain in conservation. I've addressed that it will remain in conservation in note 1.
No, I want that on it.
Right, but I,
Number 11. Note number 11, yep. What else? Do we add anything else?
Well,
can you read me that note 11? So I can just jot down what you want to kind of get at.
Subject to deed.
it'd be just lot 12-14 is not a buildable lot. That's what we've done in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no issue with that.
Right.
But you also mentioned something about conservation.
No, we
that I
decided to
meant-
just leave it as 12-14 will not be a buildable lot.
Other questions, comments, or conditions?
I just
Jim,
have
you,
a que-
Phil?
Just one question. Should this whole thing be subject to transfer and recording of a deed? As indicated by the applicant?
I mean, there's no doubt that Sarah Gorman's getting her property. She's excited to move into the place. They're waiting for the deeds to transfer. The society's getting the other piece.
That's not
It's all
really our
happening.
concern.
But I mean, if you want me to
That's
add a
not our
note,
concern.
yeah.
I just have a concern, and I'm not comfortable approving something that may not happen.
As has been noted, some of us have dealt with the Society of New Hampshire Forests, and there are a number of moving parts, as you people have found out in regards, and I can't anticipate anything that would stop this from occurring, but as soon as you say that, you have
Would you make
tempted
that
the
a
bar.
condition
I would
precedent
make
or
it a condition subsequent,
subsequent?
so they can go through the deal, that it be transferred to either the Forest Society or some other land conservation trust for conservation purposes.
Because that's actually the reason why we would allow a back lot to be created that's not buildable.
Correct, but the question of which comes first, and
Right, exactly.
they have to record this so they can do the deed, so I don't mind it as a condition subsequent.
Okay, good.
Usually we don't like those. but-
Are we putting a time frame on that?
I asked Attorney Gosselin about when the estate would close. Our office is a model of efficiency, and estates never close when we think they are. So we're hesitant to do that. Until that happens, they don't have anything.
Okay. Any further discussion on those? I think it was moved and seconded, correct, Gail, am I right?
No, we don't have a second.
All right, seconded by Jim. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries.
Thank you very much.
The next item of new business on our agenda tonight is map 6, lots 1, 2, and 1, 4 regarding a completeness review, site plan review hearing for proposed storage facilities. On each of the lots I just referenced, there are 8 storage buildings on lot 1-2 totaling 46,800 square feet. And there are 6 buildings on lot 1-4 totaling 24,800 square feet. The property is located on the Goffstown Back Road, Tower Lane, and owned by the McDonough family properties. It is zoned commercial industrial flex. This is the property on the back road as you drive from Goffstown Village into Manchester, where the towers are. And there is currently an approved subdivision on that lot for which we are hearing an application tonight regarding facilities on 2 of those lots. All right, Jonathan, are the plans that we have been provided in conjunction with this application, the plans that we have before us tonight?
Yes, they are.
And do we have any additional information tonight that we did not have in our packet on this?
Just a letter from the city of Manchester.
In regards to the regional impact, okay?
Yes, they would like it read into record.
They weren't actually read into the
I'm
record.
gonna object to that, no. It's in the record.
It's in the record,
We can read.
and we can
in
discuss it
English.
as appropriate during our consideration of the plan. So Jonathan, why don't you take us through this application and how it has gotten before us tonight?
Certainly, the McDonoughs and their engineers came into TRC and we discussed it at length, potential options, impacts, things of that nature. They made some modifications from TRC with input from fire and building department and planning and DPW. And they have brought these plans before us today, this evening. And it appears that they've addressed most of the comments. I know DPW still had comments along with fire as well. And I believe the applicant was aware of those, and I think they will address them tonight as well, any remaining issues. It's basically, it's self-storage. It's not going to be temperature controlled. There's not going to be heating and plumbing and things of that nature except for the office itself. They're not going to be impacting any of the wetlands as far as any of the construction or things of that nature. The Conservation Commission did, the application and the plans were presented to the Conservation Commission, but they did not review it to determine whether or not there was any impact, and they requested that the applicant make a presentation at some point. Pretty much sums it up.
Are there any waivers requested?
Yes. They requested a traffic study waiver for the development regulation thresholds, section 2B5A to C.
Okay. So there's been a waiver requested for a traffic study.
Mm-hmm.
We have our comments before us, and you're making a recommendation that this does not propose a regional impact.
Correct. Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission was made aware along with the city of Manchester as well.
Right.
Do I have a motion from board members in regards to the acceptance of this plan?
I move that we accept it, we grant the waiver solely for acceptance purposes, reserve the right to reconsider or review it. I'm not sure if we can find that it has no regional impact given the letter we received, so I guess I'm going to make that as a separate motion so we can discuss it. So I'll just move that.
All right.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously.
Okay, the second one goes to David's question, is what does it mean, a regional impact? And it does have a potential impact on a budding community. We've gotten their comments. Do we have an obligation to do anything more?
Well, I would just say in response to that, if Southern New Hampshire Planning has been notified and there's a regional impact from a traffic standpoint or anything like that, we usually hear from them. And the fact that we haven't, I think, says something. Additionally, the comments received from Manchester do not appear to go with the impact of traffic, but are more as an abutter as to whether or not the application of things that are all addressed in our zoning and approvals, pollution, light pollution, drainage issues, structure, be considered in light of abutters. And I would suggest that there's really nothing regional about that consideration. It's more an application of our zoning ordinance. I also note that their only concern appears to be related, their only comment, I won't even say it is a concern, has to do with a 7-unit plan development that Manchester has approved at map 775 lot 8. And it's my understanding that map 77 lot 8 is approved between the town line and Duncan Farms Road and actually goes back a bit behind where this application would be abutting Manchester. So I think I would support a motion that this does not have a regional impact. But I know Jim is checking our statute to
Well,
make us legal.
That's okay, I'm not going to argue one way or the other.
I make a motion that this does not pose a regional impact.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously. All right, if I'm not hearing anything further from board members, I'm going to go to the applicant for his presentation. Thank you.
No problem. Good evening. My name is Jay Heavysides from Meridian Land Services. I'm representing the McDonough Family Trust. 3 members of the McDonough Family Properties, are here. In the back. So, if you have any
Hiding.
hiding. Put me up here in the front to take the hits. As you all know, this parcel is located off, these projects are located off from Tower Lane, industrial subdivision that was approved back in 1999, and then we subdivided in 2004, and has sat for a long, long time. And a couple of years ago, we approved a site plan for a gas station out front on lot 6-1-3, which is on the opposite side of Tower Lane from us. So the way that we've prepared these plans is, because they are not adjacent parcels, as if it's 2 separate site plans. That's how I have the package together. And we also did this because the back lot has enough disturbance that it requires an alteration terrain permit. So the front lot doesn't have that much disturbance. So to make the whole permitting process simpler, we have it as two projects, but they are all one application. It's considered basically Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is what we call the front lot, which is out on Goffstown Back Road. It's a 2.9 acre parcel. This one we're proposing 6 buildings on for a total of 24,800 square feet. The buildings range in size from 20 to 40 feet wide and 50 to 330 feet long. The largest building is 9,000 square feet and the smallest is 1,000. One of the buildings right here will house an office in the front corner. parking will be provided in that area. The parking calcs at 1 space per 100 units would only require, I believe, 1.5 spaces, because it's about 150 units. So we're doing the required minimum of 1 handicap and 4 standard spaces for 5 parking spaces. Since there is an office, there will be a septic system on site that's proposed underneath some of the parking area. There is an existing water service to the site a little bit down Tower Lane from where we have the proposed driveway. All we have to do is tap into that and bring it over to the office building. We do have on-site lighting proposed, but it's all building mounted. There is a plan that shows the intensity levels. I believe it's about the 4th page in on each set, 4th or 5th page in. Drainage-wise, we have the site sloped in one direction, and at the end of the pavement, here, everything is sloped down this way and into the site to a rain garden. And we have sized the rain garden to handle up to a 50-year storm. There is overflow off the berm. There are 5 pipes. I've labeled the 2 that aren't clearly labeled. So we do not have an increase in runoff from the site, and it's all treated in this rain garden. This site is encumbered by a couple of utility easements and a drainage easement along Tower Lane. We do have some pavement over that area. We will be proposing 1 sign on this front site, and it'll be out at the corner of Tower Lane, Goffstown Back Road. It'll be set back the required 10 feet from the right-of-way, and on sheet SP 3-1 shows a sign detail of a similar sign that they use at other sites, and the size is well within the allowed sizes by the zoning. The second site, right up higher so you can see it, is the back site. Right here is the front site, lot 6-1-4. Tower Lane comes down and goes to a P. If we take a left on Tower Lane, you go down to the cul-de-sac. The access that we are proposing is through an access easement to the right, which goes through lot 6-1 and then comes down into the back site. The actual frontage for the back site, 6-1-2, is off the cul-de-sac of Tower Lane. Right away, the access comes in through, and the access easement continues down through here. One of the reasons that we are coming down this way is this was the intended access shown back in 2005 when the original owner was doing another site plan for storage on here. And also, part of the original subdivision drainage had a detention basin down in the vicinity of the access off from Tower Lane. And as part of the approval for the gas station, that detention basin was also just adjusted to be more in compliant with today's standards. So we have the access coming in off from the T and down into the site. Similar to the front lot, this lot also slopes in one direction and goes to a rain garden. And this rain garden has been sized to also infiltrate all the stormwater from up to a 50-year storm. So there won't be any increase in runoff from the site. Once again, lighting, same as out front. There is no office associated with this lot. That will be out front. That will be controlling this parcel also. But we are providing the 5 parking spaces since it is so far away from the office building. None of these buildings are as Jonathan said, heated or climate-controlled. And this lot does require the alteration of terrain permit. I am in receipt of the comments from DPW and the fire department. I can address them. Most of the comments I've already taken care of in anticipation of tonight. But there are some comments I think I should address. Some of the DPW comments.
I think DPW probably agrees.
We can start with.
Okay, before we get there, I just want to go to board members to see where we're at before we get into, because we usually hear from our DPW.
Procedurally, they said it's 2 plans. Are we treating these as 2 applications or 1 application with 2 plans?
Basically, one application with 2 phases, if you will.
Okay.
All right, and
Even
so,
even though they're not abutting properties, I don't mind that. It's just, when we look at them, we will want to look at each phase separately. And I guess the question then for the applicant is, when we grant the approval, it's for the whole package, not one and then the other.
I believe that was the intent. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. We have provided planning board signature spots on both plans, but the intent is that it is a package. I provided those signatures just in case you needed both.
I think we do.
okay. Why don't, at this time, thank you for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions on the presentation, the comments, the site, as to what's been presented, not the specifics? Jim?
Well, I'm looking at, and getting ahead of what you just asked us, the Conservation Commission is going to want to review this. Generally, when we have this many comments, we expect the plan to come back to us anyway. I'm not likely to approve it unless the comments have already been taken care of in the plan. So I just want to scroll ahead and say, when are we likely to continue this, and if so, to when? Because that determines how much we need to go over of the engineering detail that Megan may say she can resolve with the applicant.
I do want to say something about conservation. I'd sort of like maybe Megan, when we hear from her, to talk about the wetlands impact, because from what I understand, the discussion at conservation was sort of geared toward, here's another application, there aren't any wetlands impact, and they started to move on, and then some members of conservation said, we expect a presentation, they should come in. And that's what we got. So I guess I want to, I mean, this is a pretty big application, but I do want to address that, because conservation wanted to know why the applicant wasn't there. Applicants aren't there all the time for these presentations when there's no wetlands impact. I think Kimberly can say that. So I'm not really sure what, were you, oh, you're not on, you've resigned, so you're not on the board anymore. Okay. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but I would, given the number of comments that we got on this, I guess I would like to move to Megan's comments next, and then we can see, maybe she knows some of them addressed or what. Before we do that, Phil?
Yeah, I just, one thing, it was just a question that I'm sure perhaps Megan can address. But I remember when we approved the other application that's on the opposite side of Tower, we had discussion of the drainage coming down the rest of Tower Lane, and then there's mention of the rain garden for a 50-year flood, and I just don't know if there's an effect from the other application, the other project that's been approved, the impact that it has on this, if I'm making myself clear to you. Do you remember the other application with the runoff we were talking about coming down Tower Lane and?
Waiting until Barbara tells me I can talk.
Okay, I just.
That's all part of what Megan's
Okay,
talking
I just-
about. All right, and I guess my other question before we start is, do you have the AOT permit?
No, that has been filed.
Okay.
It was filed the following week after this was submitted to the
Submitted.
town.
Okay. All right, Megan, why don't you just, there are a number of questions. Why doesn't the applicant stay right there? Because before we go to public hearing, to the extent you've got comments that he's going to address, we'll just do it all.
So just looking at my comments, I mean, the big comments would be really 1 through 5, which, the gist of those comments are talking about what's the status of Tower Lane. It was originally intended to be a public road, and my questions to the board or to the applicant is, how is this all working with, we had the previous applicant for the gas station, and I believe they were going to do the road improvements on Goffstown Back Road, top coat down to the station. What happens if, like, this applicant comes in first, to actually build, and the other one doesn't? Are they now responsible to top coat that portion? It's just, I'm wondering how that's gonna happen. And if the gas station came in first and they did their part, and then this applicant came in and they paved, let's say they top coated, was one of my questions, along their frontage. There's still the remainder down to the cul-de-sac, like the road, no one's taking responsibility to finish top coating the road so that the town can then take it over. So I'm just wondering what the long-term status is of the road. We went out there and took pictures, it's totally getting overgrown, the ditch lines are filling in and whatnot. The previous application for the gas station is supposed to do some improvements on that detention pond. So it's just a lot of stuff that needs to be done, and I'm just concerned about, what is kind of the end picture of this? Will it truly become a public road, and how do we get there? And whose responsibility is that? Because there's several different parcels. So that's my big concern. The remainder of the stuff from 6 down, I don't think we need to talk about it all. It's minor technical things. I can work that out with Meridian. I don't want to waste the board's time going through all that, because I'd rather spend some time discussing just what's the plan with the status of the road. So my other comments are very minor, the system, the rain gardens. I checked those. They worked for the 25-year storm, design storm, without increasing the flow off the site. They're not directly connected to the pond. The pond takes care of the road and the swales and the crossing pipes within the Tower Lane. The gas station, I believe, some of it does drain down that way. But this drains directly to the side to a rain garden, which then goes off into the wetland area. So it's not like directly connected to the detention pond. Does that answer your question, Phil?
Yeah, as
Okay.
long as
Yeah.
it gets addressed some.
So I'm comfortable with the drainage. There were minor comments about that, that I can go over with Meridian, so I don't feel like I need to go through all of these with you guys, but it's up to you.
Jim, you had a comment?
Well, I just thought we were creating a nightmare at Tower Lane. I think we have, but who owns it now?
There's a few different people. It's Tower Growth Properties, and it's also Monahan family, I believe, owns a majority of the properties. Oh, the road itself? I know the access easement, it's not town. I believe that's actually just an easement.
Well, we've never accepted it as a road.
As far as I know, we've never
Have we
accepted
accepted this as a road? No.
I don't think we're trying to.
So the town doesn't own it, and the applicant in front of us doesn't own it, and we have an application in front of us for which drainage and building require a road, right? I mean, that's the long and the short of it, is we have access on paper, but nothing under tire, right?
No,
Well,
Tower
I mean,
Lane
it's not,
exists.
it exists, but not as a
90%
public
complete,
street.
the drainage
But it's
is
not a
in,
public- It's not a public street.
no, and it's not being maintained.
it's not owned by the town, it's not a publicly maintained street. Okay, so that's the question, is the board going to approve a plan when I don't see anything in this application to address that issue? Having said that, I will now turn to the applicant. I understand you attended TRC, you're aware of these comments. I think this issue came up probably at TRC. So, what say you
What's
about
that?
access to your sites?
Well, if I go down through Megan's comments, the first one's the easiest, because it says if the gas station doesn't get built, the right turn out of Tower Lane should be made into a 25-foot radius. That's understandable and totally acceptable to the applicants. When it gets down to the part about, top coating Tower Lane and then how far to go, the applicant has been in contact with the developer or the gas station, and they have agreed to split the cost of top coating that part of Tower Lane, the hammerhead, down to the hammerhead.
Which takes care of, quote, phase one of your project.
Right, but phase two also comes off from the hammerhead, so it would take care of phase one and two.
If they only go down to the hammerhead, and that's, the road kind of, I don't know if you want to go the other one so they can see what you're talking about. The gas
I'm
station-
looking at the overview. This is the easiest way for me to deal with the road. It's the picture with the whole thing on it.
But that's not
I
what,
unfortunately don't have that one
Yeah.
here. I believe that the agreement was when gas station was to do the hammerhead down to here.
Right.
So we have access over here for the back lot. What the current applicant would have to do is also pave at least over to his driveway. Probably just a little bit beyond to make like the hammerhead here.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But as you say, what happens to the rest is there's down to the cul-de-sac.
Okay, that says to the top coating portion that we're
Right.
talking about, to the hammerhead. All right, so
Correct.
what about the access to 612?
612 will come off from the end of the hammerhead
Yeah,
this way, and then it goes down
right.
right to here into the lot.
by easement or by?
By easement.
Okay, so that's not part of the road system?
No, the road system is right there, this heavier line.
Right. So the proposed access to phase two is an easement?
Yes.
Are you going to construct that road?
The easement? Yes, the driveway down to phase two.
Okay.
Driveway,
Yes.
not a road.
Not a road.
No, it's a driveway. Not a 12-foot, I believe I have it at 20 or
22.
22 feet.
Is the understanding that that's going to continue to be a private driveway and not a public road?
That piece was never proposed to be part of the public road.
Okay.
It just came in and went down to a cul-de-sac.
Bill?
What portion of Tower Lane is proposed to be public?
As Barbara asked, here is the overall plan, much smaller, but, so, with this white right here that you see, this right-of-way outline, so this was all public, the little hammerhead and down to the cul-de-sac, all of that
Was the
was
proposed
the proposed
public
public
road?
road that I remember. I don't think there was ever a piece over here, I think it just went cut off to a lot, and it was gonna be a driveway access into it, so. And it's all built, it's all bindered, the drainage is in. It was just, we have letters and stuff on file of the stuff that was never done, which included the Goffstown Back Road, road widening there, and top coating and stuff, so.
Jim?
Were those improvements required for the gas station or for the subdivision, the initial subdivision?
The subdivision. I think even the widening was part of way back when, like when I was,
So the conditions of the subdivision were never completed? Motion to revoke subdivision approval?
I don't believe we had ever gone through, I can't remember if it came to the board to discuss that, or it was just when Carl was here, we talked about it. I don't believe I know we sent some information to the board. I have to look at the memos on what was written, because I remember writing memos about what wasn't done. But I don't think we ever wrote letters, like, about revoking. We might have written a letter to threaten to call the bond, but we never followed through with calling the bond. And part of it, I think, was there was nobody out there. There were no one looking for a building permit. There were no houses. You know, you might have a situation where the road, you know, had a bond and houses started to be built, and then, you know, the town may need to do that to get the road built for safety and access. But there was nothing. It got to a point where it was bindered and built, and you could drive on it. It just wasn't top-coated, and nobody was out there. There were, you know. So the town, we didn't follow through with, like, pulling the bond to top-coat it.
Does the bond lapse?
I'm sure it has lapsed, unless it was a non-lapsing type bond. You know, I can look into what documentation was the last stuff that we sent, and give that to John and come back to you guys with whatever was the last written stuff that I have in my files.
Jim?
I'm looking at 67441, requiring frontage on street, a class 5 or better road, or a street on a subdivision plat approved by the planning board, which the applicant may argue this is, even though its access isn't from that. But if the conditions for that road that were in the subdivision approval were never completed, do we recognize it as frontage? I don't know. I mean, Jay's correct, it does have frontage on the cul-de-sac, but it's on a street that was never completed.
Can I just,
Yep.
I also noted number 3, I think I referenced the notice of decision because we discussed this last time when the gas station came forward. So there was an approval condition that said Tower Lane is designated as intended to be a public road from the original Pondview Park plan. At this time, that portion of Tower Lane that is shown on this plan as being top course of asphalt finish shall be built to the town standards for public roads and shall be maintained, including regular maintenance and plowing by the owner as a private road of Lot 1-3, until such time that the remainder of Tower Road is constructed and the entire road has been accepted by the town as a public road. So we discussed leaving it private until the rest of it is done, because we didn't want to take over a portion of it, because then we'd end up owning all of it, you know, without it being finished. So, I mean, I know we kind of went around in circles last time about this.
Mechanism to force the owner to do what needs to be done?
Well, the bond's probably lapsed. It's something Megan can check. Can revoke it. Subdivision approval, that doesn't help this applicant, 'cause lots go away.
I mean, do I understand what I'm hearing correctly, Megan, that when we had the application for the gas station, we were sort of in the same position on the road network, and we sort of worked out this access to back road and the maintenance and where the public was gonna be on that stretch, almost to the hammerhead, with that applicant. That applicant has not, that approval has been done. That work has not been done. So now I have an applicant on the other side of the same stretch of road, right? Is my memory okay so far? And rather than have the big, the big change to the entrance, that's not a very technical term, but it was a big change to the entrance, because I remember going out and talking about headlights and all of that berm work and that kind of thing. So what we're talking about is, since applicant A, who has disappeared for all intents and purposes, has not done that piece, we're not proposing all of that for this applicant, because
applicant A was supposed to do it. We don't know where applicant A is. So we're saying to applicant B, if you're at a minimum to access your site, we need you to do this
That's what
25
comment one
foot.
of mine is, yeah.
And the applicant has said, fine, I'm okay with that. And access for this phase one, we've talked to applicant A, and we're gonna split the costs. We're okay. We can deal with the paving, at least consistent with your previous approval, so we can get access to our storage shed, right? So if this was a phase one only application, we sort of wouldn't still be talking about this. What's got us continue, if I understand this correctly, why we are still talking about this is that we now have essentially application 3C by the same person off a road that is not town maintained through an access that was not part of the access plan for the original subdivision.
That I'm not 100% sure about. I don't know if there was an access easement on the original subdivision for that.
Well, it's not shown on here.
And it will not be as intended off the end of the cul-de-sac, because as far as we can tell, nobody is stepping forward to build that part of this, to finish off this part of the plan. So if we were talking about phase one of this applicant B, we'd be probably able to muddle our way through this. So the applicant is choosing to go forward with 2 phases of this application. After attending TRC, where the issues in regards to the road, assumption of responsibility, maintenance, and now possible revocation of subdivision plan is being discussed. Just so I'm clear.
I don't think it got that far on the TRC. It was talking
Probably
about the
not,
pavement.
but we're all here now.
Now we are all here.
Okay. Because I don't want to spend 2 hours talking about this plan, where the applicant is saying, this is a double package here, folks. It's one application fee, one plan, and I got 2 sites that you want the planning board to look at to approve site development of that have substantially different issues in our ability to move forward here tonight. Also, that it is likely at least one board member is going to request that, at a minimum, Conservation Commission, since they requested to have a presentation, should get one before we hear it again. Whether I agree with that or not is another issue, but that has also occurred. And when would the next meeting of Conservation be?
End of October.
So if that,
26,
I'm just putting this out here before we go down this path, that we might very well be looking at a motion to continue to a date after the next conservation meeting. So having put out all there for board members to consider, I want to hear from the board members about how you want to handle this plan, because Megan has brought up some substantive issues in regards to compliance with the subdivision approval and assumption of maintenance issues in regards to further development on Tower Lane, which obviously has implications for the remaining parcels on this site in regards to their future development. And-
Can I interject a little
Sure.
bit here? Because applicant B and applicant A, they have been talking about the construction of the gas station and the storage units. They're trying to get them to go at the same time. It doesn't look like the gas station is quite ready yet, but it will be going. He's getting bids now. So where he had agreed to do the pavement, the McDonoughs have agreed to assist him with that, the top coating up down to the hammerhead.
Well, and if I understand it, if that indeed is the fact, you don't end up having to do the little 25-foot turn if applicant A is in fact doing all this at the same time, right?
But if he doesn't go until the spring,
Okay.
if they start this fall, if we get the approval, and then they start before him, they have to at least put in that 25-foot rounding for their traffic needs.
All right.
Then when he would come in, he would do whatever is required for his parcel. But we've agreed to the Tower Lane and the hammerhead.
So you're asking the board to approve a plan that you can't comply with until applicant A does what he's supposed to do after your client wants to begin.
The only part that I think, I'm not sure what part we wouldn't be complying with other than the tapers out on,
Well, are you going to do the top coating before applicant A is on board paying half of it and before he does the construction on his side? I would think top coating is going to happen after all of that occurs. You're going to do the top coating beforehand?
yes.
Okay.
And I was talking with them tonight about this before the meeting.
Yep.
About the maintenance too, since the town won't accept it, and they don't see it as a big issue to help plow the road too. Until it's
Okay.
accepted.
You know, Jonathan, I'm just thinking it would have been helpful to have the conditions that we had for applicant A here tonight, which might appear magically for some reason, but I don't have them in front of me. Jim?
Well, the challenge, I think the front parcel, as you said, is solvable by the agreement of the parties of the
Right.
butters. They have an incentive to work that out. I'm still struggling on the back lot, and I haven't thought it through completely of how we do this. Because
Could you elaborate on your struggles with backlot? Sorry, I apologize for interjecting, but
well, let me,
if you could be specific, that might help Jay answer your questions.
I think Jay's got what our struggle with the back lot is.
I would say 67441, if you want to read that.
Thank you.
So you're familiar with.
I mean, they have the frontage there, and the lot has been conveyed, but I understand that it's a private road up until the town accepts it. So if it's a private road, the town's not going to be performing the maintenance, and we aren't attempting to make it a public road for the entire way, that we should be able to continue on since we do have access off from this private road.
So are you proposing to finish the rest of the road down to the cul-de-sac? That's not what I heard.
Yeah.
Would- Right now, it is a private road because the town hasn't accepted it, right? Because there's no top coat. So until the whole thing gets top coated, it will still be a private road, correct?
Right.
So if previously it was acceptable to only top coat the portion that we needed to get the gas station to work, which also includes the front, our front lot, because of our access easement to the back lot, we are also coming off the hammerhead, which would be in that part of the road that would be top coated.
So what you're saying is your access point is moving from, you're telling me you have access, so you should be able to develop it, but when you develop it, you're changing your access from the cul-de-sac to the hammerhead.
But we aren't creating the access easement. It was part of the original subdivision.
Okay. Kimberly?
I guess I feel like I get what he's trying to achieve, and I'm not sure where we're stuck, because if they don't build it, they have no way to access their own lot, and they won't have anyone use their facility. So we have to assume that they're going to pay for this private driveway down to the lower parcel, or they won't have a functional business. So.
Jim?
I invite you to read 67441 in its entirety, so you'll understand what the issue is. And I'm not trying to create problems for them. It's a statute that overrides zoning or our regulations. And access, it's a street, giving access to lot means a street abutting the project. You can't, under the statute, you cannot have access on a private right-of-way in order to get the required frontage to comply with the statute. Now, you can, if the governing body, which is the selectmen, approve it, they can, so maybe that's a solution for them. And there's a procedure laid out for doing that with a waiver, municipal waiver agreement. Or there is an exception for a street on a subdivision plat approved by the planning board. So the question raised is, this street is shown on a plan that we approved, but it was never built. And arguably, the conditions of that approval were never satisfied. So does the remainder, the back portion of this road that would otherwise give you access under the statute satisfy the requirements of, it's 674-41, Roman numeral 1A, 2? And that's the question, and I don't know the answer to it, but it's a substantial question, and we can't ignore it, because it overrides our planning power under the terms of the statute.
If-
That's the issue, and
Right.
but maybe you can answer it, I just haven't answered it yet.
Well, I think that's usually why the towns take out a bond. In this case, I think, because of the time lapse, that the bond has probably expired, so there's no course for the town to really take to get the applicant, the original applicant, to finish it.
But that's not our problem, it's yours.
But if you have this approved subdivision, it's on your tax maps, it's been now conveyed several times.
And that's the counter argument, I understand that, yeah.
I'm wondering if, because the bond expired, if that basically puts the onus to top coat it actually onto the town because they allowed it to expire.
No, good luck.
I got a grasp.
Good try.
I thought I had the room, I really did.
You were going pretty good.
No, the answer may be, if he goes to the selectmen and gets one of these, later on the statute allows that, and then we're covered. That sidesteps the issue, and they may be happy to have the tax revenue and say, fine. I'm just not sure of the answer if that doesn't happen.
Megan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to, when we approved the gas station, I remember there was discussion about they originally were only going to top coat to their driveway. And we asked them to go the entire length of their frontage. And I think, and we'd have to look back to this, but I think the thought was if they top coat in front of their frontage, and then the next person would top coat in front of their frontage, and then the last person off the end when they develop. And I'm not sure if the lot on the right is got towers on it, so there's really no further development.
There's one tower on the next immediate lot, but then there are two
Okay.
or three more
So,
tails
well, again,
off the bottom.
the last leg of it gets tricky because there's several people off of it, but, I know we were trying to push the first applicant to do as much as possible so we could try and get a chunk of it done, not just enough for them to get into their driveway, but the whole length of their property there, I believe was one of the discussions we had, so.
Phil?
Yeah, just one of thought that I had, and I don't know the feasibility or the ability to do it. Tower Lane, where it comes in off the back road, once the turning lanes are established on that, and that's created, the portion that's paved where it comes down through the hammerhead and where the driveway or up to or past the frontage of the application of Phase 1 that's in front of us, if that was completed, the town standards, the way that it was on the original subdivision, for the town to accept the whole road, what's the possibility of, I know it's up to the Board of Selectmen, it's not up to the acceptance, but phasing possibly of Tower Road so that portion could be accepted as public road? And I'm just wondering then, would the rest of it continue as could continue temporarily as a driveway off the public road?
Well, one issue with that is that the detention pond
I
exists
was
off the
gonna
end of
say
the
the
cul-de-sac.
drainage is-
And the
Okay.
detention, technically, there's access out there because you can drive down the road that is paved. So, there is access to it. But that road with Binder now, however many years it's been, I don't know when this place was built, 2006? Four?
5 or 6?
Yeah, so 10 years, that's gonna start to, deteriorate without having the wearing course on top of there, and, I don't know, that's not up to me to decide, like you said, it's gonna be the board of.
I understand, I'm just questioning if that's a possibility of how we might be able to solve the issue.
Again, it's all, the drainage system is all connected, so there's swales down the whole side of it. So again, if you can't just abandon the second half of it, you know what I mean? There's a swale system that needs to be cleaned out, or it'll totally overgrow, and there's a pond that needs to be
Right.
maintained. So really, we'd be saying yes and taking up to the hammerhead and all the drainage with it, just not the pavement part, which is kind of silly.
Okay.
We're obviously not talking, haven't talked about the details of the actual site plan. I want to just ask for a general comment so the applicant knows. Do any members of the board have issues with the proposed uses of the site and the general layout of the property? Jim?
Well, the question on the, this is going from the ridiculous to the sublime, I suppose, but on the Phase 1 is landscaping along the road, because we don't have, the elevations don't show much about well, they don't show the backside and what that's going to look like.
The backside of the building?
Well, yeah, it's facing the back Goffstown Back Road.
There won't be access into the storage from that. It will just be solid wall.
What does the solid wall look like?
The coloring is going to be a dark tan, kind of mocha. Depends on how much cream you put in your coffee. And the trim work is going to be a muted green. These are only 10-foot tall buildings. Sheet SP 1.5 shows that we have trees planted along the backside, along Goffstown Back Road. At the intersection of Goffstown Back Road and Tower Lane, where the proposed sign is, there are some shrubs around the sign. But that area is also a utility easement, a drainage easement, so we can't put as much landscaping in there, but we do have some landscaping in there. So we put it a lot of it up along Goffstown Back Road. The back portion of the lot, as you go around Tower Lane, that area is going to remain in its current state or natural state, and let it continue to regrow. We won't be touching the wetlands. So we are trying to shield it. There won't be any lights from the building on the Goffstown Back Road side. All the lights are for the driveway within the buildings, in between the buildings.
That was a good thought. Looks good.
Any other questions or comments?
What's a,
David?
The elevation architectural plans, page A1, A2, they appear to be taken from some other project because they make reference to buildings A, B, C, D, so forth, and they don't address 20-foot buildings and 40-foot wide buildings.
Actually, it was a previous version of this. I had longer buildings. So they are the same buildings. The only thing that really changes in any of them is the length. From when it says B1, B2, they have different
And the
lengths.
width, and therefore how many customer bays are in the width.
Right, these are for,
So my suggestion is A1, the architectural plans ought to address the actual dimensions of the buildings you're proposing.
they're showing the 30-foot wide buildings, which was what we had before, all 30s.
Okay, but
30s
not what
and
we have
20s.
now. David's point is not what we have now.
They aren't exactly what we have now, no.
Okay.
It's going to revise them. I guess I'd request, even though it's going to show a blank wall, an elevation that shows the back, so it's part of the application, because right now all we have is. It won't be in a very exciting drawing, but at least then it's in the record.
2 A1s.
All right, Phil, you had your hand up.
Well, I guess Jim more or less addressed it, and the material, are these steel buildings? Steel
I believe
structures?
so. Are they steel?
Yes, they're cookie cutter.
That whole wall will be that mocha color you referred to, that will be on the back side of that blue adjustment.
Jonathan, just so you know, my copy is 2A1s, Phil's has 2A1s, the
Mine's
copy machine, Ghost has stricken again.
They're both called 2A1s. If you look at the bottom of sheet 19 of 20 and sheet 20 of 20. Because there was, some buildings are called Building A, and then others are called Building, where is
Oh,
it?
okay.
D through I.
I see the end wall elevation is different for the buildings. Okay, thank you. I go for the big print at my.
Yeah.
Okay.
Barbara?
Right, Michael.
Good question. The proposed sign, is that going to be, illuminated? Can you describe the sign at all?
Yes, it will, on SB 3.1, that is a similar sign that they use at other facilities. I believe that the lighting is shining up on that one.
Like a spotlight for night, but no electronic signage?
Right, it's not backlit, not internally lit.
No LEDs going on there?
Right.
Have you read to see if that complies with our zoning ordinance?
That one I have to check on, whether it's uplit or downlit. We will make sure that the sign is in compliance.
I don't think we allow uplit.
And is that the only proposed signage? Will there be any signage on the back side of that street-facing building, A1?
No, this is the signage as proposed, it's one sign.
Just that little one in the corner? Okay.
Jim?
Well, but given that it's 9:30 and we got some issues to work out, I don't want to cut anybody off, but at some point we want to continue this.
Well, I just wanted the applicant to know, my sense is this is about to be continued by the board at best. And I just wanted the applicant to get some comments on the actual plans that we have in front of us and the structures as we see them in the plans. So when big issues get resolved or addressed, they're not hearing those kind of issues that we can't deal with. Megan, is there anything that we have not talked about that you think needs to be specially addressed? You've said you felt that the rest of the comments could easily be addressed if they haven't already been. Okay.
Can I speak to the waiver?
Yes.
Traffic, because I think this one's pretty simple. The original traffic study was for this to all be industrial, which, for the buildings that had been shown on the concept for this subdivision, for this development, it was projected there'd be 467 vehicle trips per day between the two lots. With the current use that's proposed there, it's 179, so it's down 288 vehicle trips per day. Plus, I believe when the gas station was in, that it was updated, there was a memo about the traffic, that it wouldn't draw traffic to the site, is going to be taking existing traffic. So with the gas station actually not generating additional trips, and our two uses being down drastically, didn't see really a need for a full-fledged traffic study or a traffic analysis.
Okay. All right, if the board has its struggles, why don't we give the applicant an idea of our opinion on the waiver, since at this point it has been addressed for acceptance purposes only, as to how you want to proceed on that?
I'd like to hear if Jonathan has a recommendation or thoughts on the applicant's request.
I think the traffic counts in the previous discussions with the applicants as well, that seems feasible. Doesn't seem
It's
like
a reasonable request.
Doesn't seem like a reasonable request.
I'd move on the basis of the representations made by the applicant. Well, question, may I ask the applicant a question? You've given us trips, is that this ITT?
Yes. Yeah, the ITE that we use for the light industrial is code 110, and what we use for the self-storage facility is code 151.
I move that we grant the waiver.
I'll second it.
It's been seconded by Phil. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries. Okay, we going to address this application anymore tonight, members, or are we continuing it to
Need
a
public
further
hearing?
day? And I apologize, board members remind me that at this time, I need to, and I will, open this application up for a public hearing. A public hearing, if this matter is continued by the board, will be continued to any future hearing date. Is there any member of the public here who would like to make a comment on this application? Yes, sir. Come on forward.
Yeah, you can stay. You're my engineer too. How you doing? My name Jack, last name Nasser, N-A-S-R. I'm the owner for the Part A,
N-A-Z-Z-A.
N-A-S-R.
Oh, N-A-S-R, sorry.
N-A-S-R. I'm like applicant A, and
I know you have.
so this way you'll see it. Like, I'm here to support the project because what's killing me right there, like, I'm not saying the board asked for too much. That's what need to be asked. But as Jay said, like, it was bonded. All my understanding gonna cost me the road improvement $20,000, end up in $160,000. I asked the ex-owner because I get forced when I get approved, I have to close on it. I asked the owner if he could help me in the beginning to do the road improvement. I'm waiting till I sell the lot, I spend monies, this and that, and I'll see what I could do. I had a back injury, I ended up in surgeries, pushed me behind, I came back and I renewed my permit, and definitely it's gonna be a gas station soon. It's gonna be before it expires the permit. I met with Mark and Mike and we agreed to road improvement to pay half the share and move on, or we could ask the owners, the original owners, if there's other parts of that project, if could help in the future. I done it in Loudon, New Hampshire, and I'm success. I built a place in 2002. I bought 2 acres from 50. Everyone put his share. But here, no one anybody put the share other than me and Mark. Now we're gonna put shares to do it. If you let me point it right here, because Megan, I wanna correct Megan. Please do not take it personally. The road proposed to the gas station to here to be paved, not all the way to the end,
Okay,
okay? And have to be increased on both ends,
right, you had a
or
little.
left and right turn.
Right.
And we agree on it. Same thing on the road, like to be plowing that road myself in the beginning, if no one there, if I built on it. And same thing on the pond. If I build it, I'll fix the pond, but if I didn't build the station, I cannot afford it. I move on, I bought in other town, and I built 2 places, instead sitting right here and doing absolutely nothing, because no one helped me. Now, me and Mark, we're gonna do that project and his brothers. And I told Mark when we met, I'm willing, even if I didn't build the gas station, the road, I'll put half it for the road improvement before we build and do anything. I'll pave the share on it till my driveway. I'll share whatever it costs in that project. But the gas station definitely, it will be built and open before June 1 of 2017.
You heard it here first, folks. Get your
Okay.
gift cards now.
So,
I'll be there for the ribbon cutting.
I'm support, and possibly Dunkin' Donut too, it will be open at the same time.
Okay.
So we still in negotiate with Dunkin' Donut. But I'm support the project, and I'm not sure, like you brought it back on the road and stuff like this. Let everyone do whatever he could do right now and move on, because needs something to be built right there, creating some money to the town and make everybody happy. Like, I'm willing to plow my shares, and I'm sure Mark in the beginning till we get moving. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak at this time? I'm seeing no other hands or interest in speaking, so at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing, subject to any further motion for continuance by the board. Board members, what's your
I
preference?
move that we continue this, really, it's 2 meetings from now, right? To get one for Conservation Commission. I want to, give us time to iron out the Phase 2 issues, because that's really, it may be easily solved if the selectmen want to help, but
Conscom's on the 26th. There's a planning board meeting on the 27th, the 10th of November.
The 27th? What day of November would that be?
No, of October.
October.
Excuse me, sorry.
Okay.
27th October,
Like
10th of
next month,
November,
I see
and
talking-
17th of November.
Well, if we go out 2 meetings, is that, would be time to... force this
Given that
around.
if the applicant wants to go to the Board of Selectmen, they're only meeting every other week.
That's true.
So I think we almost have to go to the first meeting in,
There may be other solutions, it's just that is one, and they may want to try.
Is there a forum for me to speak and ask questions at any time today?
Who are you?
He's the applicant.
yeah, come on down.
My name is Mark McDonough. I'm one of the owners of the storage facility project, one of the McDonough family. Our objective when we came today was to try and get this project approved. We came and met with TRC. We tried to get as much information as possible. We worked diligently over the last several weeks to try and address each and every issue in hopes to be able to push this project through. We have financing in place, contractors ready to move earth and get this project underway this fall. And based on what I'm hearing thus far in today's meeting, that doesn't appear to be the least bit possible. My question to the board is, I know that Jim is suggesting a selectman option to gain access to this second lot. And the reason that we're making application in its entirety is that a storage facility is only viable if you have a significant amount of square footage. To build Phase 1 on its own without the approval of Phase 2 doesn't make this a viable business endeavor for us. So that's the reason. I know there seem to be some question as to why there were two. What's concerning to me as a business owner is that this board approved the convenience store project based upon, even though the bond and the road wasn't built. And all we're asking for is a similar accommodation by the board. Our willingness to maintain the road, handle it as a private road until such a time that the rest of the project is developed is certainly a consideration for us. We took the initiative to meet with Jack Nasser and try and share in those costs, knowing that the developer, who had a bond, it got released, wasn't held accountable, and the lots were able to be conveyed. I think there's something inherently wrong with that whole process, if that can actually happen. But it has happened, and now we need to move forward from there. So before we just adjourned and push us back 2 more months, I'm going to ask the board to offer us some suggestions as to what we may do to make this viable. You've already set a precedent with the convenience store and allowed them approval to push forward without a road that's apparently non-conforming. So I guess I would just ask you, before you send us down the road, what direction we can go in to try and address those issues.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Jim?
Well, in answer to his question, it's a statutory issue, and Jay can read it and find the solution there. But there is an option, but unfortunately, if it involves the selectmen, that takes a little time. And that's what we're giving them a little extra time to deal with. If we bring it forward next week, next time, and there's no solution, then they'll just get kicked back again. So that's the basis for the motion to postpone or continue rather for 2 meetings.
Jim, what?
Kimberly.
is-
Kimberly.
It seems like it's tied to both phases, right? As you said earlier, if we could have figured out maybe a way to do Phase 1, but the Phase 2 is our problem, and as the applicant has said, he needs Phase 1 and Phase 2 together, so that is part of the problem. It does make it separate from the convenience store because it's a different issue.
It's a different problem. Yeah.
So, and we have certain obligations, both as to our rules and the state rules. So,
Would the board consider Phase 1, and then push back for Phase 2 and hand it as a separate application.
I mean, I think I thought I was nearly flat-out explicit in basically saying, explicitly saying, Phase 1 is not a problem based on what this board has previously done. Phase 2 is what the issue is. The applicant has chosen to make one application, not two applications. Our hands are tied then in consideration of this application. And I moved the discussion on so that we could determine a way to address the issues with Phase 2. Just so people understand, this discussion that looks like we're not going to deal with it has already gone on some time, and I am mindful we have another application. Everybody has been waiting a long time tonight. It seems our agendas for the past few months have either had next to nothing on them or had a number of people waiting, and it's always distressing for me as a chair to realize that we have all sorts of people wanting to be heard and people who have not yet been heard. So I apologize if it seems like I'm trying to push this along. I am appreciative that people are trying to operate business, and you're not proposing something to spend money for fun. You want to get an application so that you can get things going. And I was just trying to see if there was some way to do it, and I thought maybe the applicant might want to recess to discuss whether they wanted to split it up, but that was not the route chosen during the discussions. So that's why we're at today. And so I apologize if the applicant doesn't think the board recognizes the issues. I think the board did recognize the issue and was and Megan pointing out the issues to us, we were trying to figure out a way to do it. I don't know that the access itself, the fact that it's not on the road is the issue. I think it is the statutory issue that brings up in regards to the road, because while I know from looking at it, it looks like the same access issue. It's really not, and that's our problem. David, I apologize for that long-winded statement. David, you had your hand up.
Jim, specifically, what do the selectmen have to do addressing Tower Road?
They have to accept, it's really to allow construction on a private road, or a road that doesn't have access to a public road. And here, this road is of uncertain status, I'll say. Maybe it's because it was on a plan that we approved and didn't revoke. It meets the statutory requirements. I might argue the other way, but I've often lost in arguments. And the way to get around that is to have the selectmen go through the procedure that's in the statute, and then they're okay. So I'm just giving them that as an alternative.
If I could ask.
Go ahead, please, David.
On the plan 2.2, it shows that the old easement is called an access easement. What's the, of a certain width? What's the difference then that his driveway is also an easement into the Hammerhead?
You have to read the statute in the case that was in Hooksett. It actually resulted in the Rowing Club owning its land. That is the basis for that. It's that statutory interpretation of access, which is the road giving, having frontage or whatever.
Not just,
it's not access.
not just an easement through someone else's property.
The whole point of that is you can't do it based on an easement solely.
Just
Phil.
on that process, Jim, are you familiar with the process? Is the noticing, is that something a selectman can do as an agenda item, or does it have to go a public hearing process? Or are there two public hearing processes?
I'd have to reread it. I don't remember.
I'm just asking that question for time frame.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to look at it. Just a minute.
Jonathan.
If it's something similar to access of a Class 6 road where the Board of Selectmen will ask for comments from the planning board.
That's it.
Can we provide those comments, or no comment, or what we would typically do?
Correct, yeah, that's the procedure.
Would we be able to do that to now to say.
Jonathan's asking that if the applicant decides to do that with the Board of Selectmen, what would the board's position be to the typical selectmen's request for our position on the request? And I think what Jonathan is saying, from what he's been able to discern, our typical response is no comment. Jim?
The issue here is what Megan said about the drainage going to the rear, and what's the status of that if this project is dependent on that. If it isn't, then maybe we don't care, but that was a substantial question she raised, and I don't have enough information then to have a recommendation. And postpone this. Now, it may be that Jay is smarter than I am, can come up with a different answer, but
I'm going to ask the applicant, yeah, go ahead.
With reference to the drainage, that was part of the approval for the gas station, that he would clean the ditch down alongside of the road, because that's really the only parcel that uses that drainage other than what's coming off the road and the towers. These two lots are self-contained, so it's not like there's a big drainage network coming down. It's just the ditch that's along the road that if the brush was cut and removed, it got mowed, and he puts in the detention basin, that's it. It's not a big system. So even if it's still maintained by him until the road is paved, no one else has to do anything to it.
David?
This planning board back in 14 took away the future of this rear easement by requiring a detention basin.
The detention basin was part of the original subdivision?
The original subdivision.
Yes. So the
2005.
issue of having a road possibly through there is moot now, because it's going to be a drainage basin. So,
There was still there is a gravel drive around the detention basin, so there is still potential access. But you're right, if there's a drainage
The full-
easement there, then that was the reason for the access easement off from the hammerhead to allow them in.
I guess just procedurally, could the applicant choose to modify their proposal in order to get Phase 1 built and constructed this fall? Have the town accept the road, then come back for Phase 2 in the spring? Is that a viable way forward?
If the applicant shows it, it is. I've said a couple of times.
well, if the applicant is going to amend its application, arguably, I don't know if it has to be renoticed. If it did, we wouldn't be able to.
Right,
do
we
it next. It'd be 2 meetings from now anyway.
Right, it might not be any quicker.
Hmm?
It might not be any quicker.
No, but it gives them a.
Why would it be 2 meetings?
Well, do we have to renotice if it's a material amendment? I'm not going to consider that. They're just withdrawing Phase 2 from their application.
I don't think phasing is, why would phasing be a material change?
Well, you're going to convert it into a phased application or 2 separate applications? It'd be easier to do it as 2 separate, because then we don't have to deal with, we can't approve this Phase 2 anyway. So I think if they wanted to go ahead with Phase 1, they should amend their application so it's only Phase 1, and then come back in with a separate application for Phase 2 after we've dealt with this other issue.
And I think I would maintain that conservation's interest was in Phase 2.
I agree.
She-
I'm not on conservation any longer,
No,
but the fact that we're avoiding all the wetland impact in Phase 1 would be my suggestion.
So if the applicant, could I just continue this then to December 10th and leave it to the applicant to decide how he wants to proceed? We can always, October 27th, and leave it, as compared to continuing for a couple of meetings, and if you all decide that you're going to go for the full full package and deal with the access issues as we've discussed for the Phase 2, then you can ask us to continue it to another meeting. But if there's some consideration that maybe we just annex this Phase 1 off so that you can get it done, go forward. I mean, and that's the decision. So I think we can continue this to the next meeting, and
I agree with that suggestion.
I'll amend my motion then.
did we have a second to that
Yep.
motion to begin with?
Yep.
Phil?
Yep, that's
Phil did
fine.
it? All right, so that motion to continue this matter would be continued to our next meeting of October 27th. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously. Sorry for that prolonged discussion. We'd like something to go forward, and we like the plan, so.
Well, thank you for your time and
Well, and I know you went to TRC, and we appreciate it.
Hey, Jay, look into that statute, and you may be able to find a.
I will.
Deal with it.
I have their attorney look at it too, because you guys look at things different than engineers.
And it's a puzzle to us all, the way how do you interpret some of those clauses.
Yeah.
And I do for a living, I'm still puzzled by it.
Now, that's, right.
To admit it?
Or to be puzzled.
To be puzzled.
All right, the next item on our agenda tonight is another matter of new business. This is map 34, lot 88. It is a completeness review, site plan review hearing for a proposal to expand an existing plumbing contractor business by adding a 1,600 square foot two-story warehouse building on the property along with an existing 1,606 square foot office building. The owner is Fletcher Mountain USA LLC, located on 9 Church Street. It is zoned village commercial. I want to thank the applicant for sitting patiently through this meeting. I do always sit here and wonder, why don't they just come at 9? But I know it's risky. We have an application for development review in front of us for this application. There needs to be a discussion on whether there has a regional impact, and before we even get there, I would ask the board consider the waiver request that you have before you. In your packet, because the applicant is aware, we need to deal with waivers first. There is an application for waiver of checklist, and I will ask the applicant to address these. I want the board to address these first, because I'm not seeing much, these need to be addressed first before we go. So there is a hand sketch of a drawing in the application package, and then there is a memorandum of 3 pages requesting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 8 waivers is what it amounts to. You also were provided, as part of your packet, a plan, and I'm assuming this is the same plan that I have in front of me tonight. Jonathan tells me it is. In regards to that. So before we go anywhere on this plan, if I could ask the applicant and his agent to address the waiver request.
Could he give us, it'd be helpful if he gave us, I don't know if he has a chart to put on the board, but give us some of the overview of what we're looking at, because his comments are gonna be in relation to what's here, and some of us aren't smart enough to figure out what we're looking at.
All right, Jonathan, why don't you bring us through this before we get to that
Need
then?
a little context, I guess.
Okay, certainly.
I'm sorry, I sort of,
Mr. Fletcher originally gained approval to move the shed from the fire station over to this property from the Board of Selectmen with a condition that he get approval from the planning board.
Correction, we just authorized the movement of the building, not to this parcel.
Okay.
Could have been any parcel.
Thank you. And it was moved to that location, and since then, Mr. Fletcher's been working through the process, with planning, and also with speaking with Derek as well as myself to try to get this finalized. It's currently, the structure is elevated, and it's slightly precarious right now, so I know the applicant would like to move this along as quickly as possible to maintain safety and
Excuse me? There's been an engineering, okay, continue.
Engineering, I'm sorry?
I mean, the applicant has chosen to move the building to this site and has got it in the position it is, correct?
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
so
Sorry,
that's-
excuse me.
okay.
There has been proposed landscaping and parking, and there have been, I think it was roughly 9, I think there was actually 9 waivers. There's also some comments from fire and DPW and myself that need to be looked at as well. But as you can see here, it's one page. It's a little bit difficult to determine a lot of the information, but I think the applicant and the applicant's representative can talk us through this. There's traffic flow through the gravel area that's currently there right now. It's roughly 20 feet from the existing building. It's not going to be, from my understanding, it's not going to be plumbed or heated. It's just going to be basically for storage. He has handicap parking on here as well. And it ends up going down Church Street through the traveled paved way and then continues on through Depot Street.
Okay, so for reference, we're talking about the lot behind Town Hall, between Town Hall
And the post
and the
office.
post office building.
That's correct.
And it includes the building that is currently a plumbing shop, apparently, that was the former yarn shop. That used to be part of Town Hall. And this particular lot goes through from Church Street through to Depot Street on the other side of it. And so it is a rectangular lot that has a currently existing building with a commercial use in it. The zoning of this particular lot is, I don't want to misspeak, village commercial. Village commercial.
That's what we're looking at.
Yep.
I'm pointing out into the ground.
Yeah, I'm like, what is it, what are you,
Yeah.
yes, that's why I said it.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
what everybody has been looking at who's gone to the post office or come to town hall. That's why there's a structure out behind us. All right, do people sort of, so people sort of understand the context of what this application is, and this application is needed to site a building on the lot, just like any other building construction would be needed. So in conjunction with that application, the waivers have been requested. So at this point, I'm going to ask the applicant to address the waiver requests. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Richard Kohler. I work for Robert Todd Land Use Consultants in New Boston. Our firm was hired by Mr. Fletcher to survey the subject lot relative to the proposal to relocate the building in question from the fire department lot to his property. You've just described where it's at. It's westerly, just behind me, between this, the town hall and the post office. Mr. Fletcher and I attended a technical review hearing with department heads in seeking their advice on moving forward with a site plan, which we have here before us. And the results of the input and guidance from that meeting is reflected here on the plan relative to parking, landscape screening, placement of the
All right,
dumpster.
Excuse me, before you address the substance of the plan, can we talk about the waivers?
Okay.
Because I think we need to address the waivers before we address the plan.
Understood.
itself.
Would you like me to just
Usually, and
recite them as they're?
Well, and the reason I'm asking you to do this is quite often we look at the waivers and we say, as we have 2 times tonight when we've had a waiver request, we're accepting the plan, subject with the waivers. I actually told you the wording now and I can't remember it.
For purposes of acceptance.
For purposes of acceptance only.
Okay.
I have to tell you, in the years on this board, which hasn't been as many as some members, I have never seen so many waiver requests.
Okay.
It is quite a number, and waiver requests are viewed from the board, in my experience, both not only as to the plan before it, but also as to issues of precedent and compliance with our zoning ordinance. So before we start to address the details of the plan, I'm going to ask you to go through the waiver requests, because I think that the board needs a little more description of the waiver requests because of those factors. So we all have your memo, or the memo from your firm. So if we can go through, or Jonathan, if, I mean, however the applicant's more comfortable going forward, I think we need to deal with these waiver requests.
Okay, would you be willing to go through these with me?
Mind if I steal my packet back from you?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Let me, if I could just express to the board, I'm actually a field tech for Todd Land Use Consultants. I did the survey. I can speak very intelligently to the plan. Other members of our firm have submitted the actual application. They were unable to attend tonight. If I have a deer in the headlight stare, that is the reason, and I will cooperate in every way I possibly can. As I said, I was here to address the plan, and most specifically, the current situation of the structure itself. But
Okay.
by all means, I want to follow
All right,
procedure.
well, so let's,
and-
because if the board will humor me, I think we need to address these waiver requests, because I will tell you, I had some difficulty reviewing this plan. I thought it was pretty compact, it was hard to follow, and I have some concerns about going forward with that. So,
Okay.
Jonathan, let's go through these waiver requests.
Alrighty, looking at the waiver request, there's a request for digital filing, section 4A6. Zoning district boundaries within 1,000 feet of the site, section 4C9. Vehicle parking required by zoning ordinance and landscaping, section 4C11. Location of all utilities.
Okay, hold on, I can read that part. I want to
Go
talk
on.
about what
Oh.
we're asking.
Okay.
4A6, digital filing.
That's basically it's electronic files, so we can put them into our computer system, which is significant.
And is that typically required, that we require that for all submissions?
Yes.
Are you aware of any waivers we've granted for this in the past? And I know you have limited experience with
As-
applications.
Since I've been here, we've required it on all.
Okay, all right. So next one.
The zoning.
And it's my understanding, and I understand that it's been represented that Mr. Kohler probably did not do this memo, that this is, that this is expensive, so they're suggesting we'll just draw, the new building added to the lot can be drawn by scaling from existing features already included within the town GIS. Are you aware whether we have anybody on staff that would even be doing that? Because my understanding is we don't allow anybody to actually touch our GIS.
Neil handles that. We get the information in electronic format, and then he uploads it.
Right, he uploads it, he doesn't draw it.
Correct.
Right, but he gets it on, he'll do it if he has it submitted to him electronically.
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, next, 4C9.
Zoning-
I'm sorry, Kimberly, did you have a further question?
Can I ask for clarification? There's no paving proposed or anything, it's just the building?
Correct, it's just the placement of the building.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not, isn't there landscaping and
Yeah, there
parking
seems
and
like
all sorts of other stuff going on?
this plan.
There is
Shrubs,
landscaping.
trees.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
it's just the building.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, Jonathan,
I'm sorry.
zoning districts and boundaries within 1,000 feet of the site.
The applicant stated the site is commercial use, and basically what this is, it's asking for, a whole picture, and that's the information that we like to have. I'm not aware of it, since I've been here, I haven't seen it waived.
All right, so what this is saying is that normally at some point in the plan set, there's a plan that shows the lot with everything within 1,000 feet of its boundaries,
Correct.
and we don't have that in this case.
It
Okay.
shows all the buildings, or, I mean,
Zoning.
The district and boundaries within 1,000 feet of the site.
So in other
Of zoning
words,
districts, yeah.
Correct, yes. sorry.
in other words, not this, the 1,000-foot piece of this.
An enlarged
Right.
picture of that.
Right, okay. All right, 4C11.
Vehicle parking required by zoning. We've had alternative parking arrangements made that I've been aware of.
What does that mean? I don't understand what you said.
Vehicle parking required in the zoning ordinance and landscaping elements is required by development regulations. We've asked, people have asked for waivers in the past for parking. I think the only thing that we've done, well, tonight we just asked them to stick to them. Haven't seen a waiver that's been approved for vehicle parking.
Okay, so if I look at note 13 on the plan, it says parking per zoning ordinance, and it goes through the required parking, and it comes up with a total required 10 parking spaces, and they're providing 3 spaces for 3 employees plus 1 handicap accessible site. So the waiver is requesting for 3 spots plus
3 plus
handicap as compared to a total of 10.
4 less.
Okay, and
And 10 is based on floor space,
Yes.
including the new building?
well,
There's 10 on Church Street, on 9 Church.
okay, but it's not shown on the site plan, so for purposes of this plan, they don't exist. All right, so 4C15.
The size and location of all existing proposed public, private, above or below ground utilities. Again, that's something that I haven't seen since I've been here.
You haven't seen it waived. Is there a connection that has to occur to this building with an underground utility or above-ground utility?
The shed, as far as I know, was just going to be have electric to it.
Electricity right now, yeah.
I knew I read something on it. It was just electricity?
Mhm.
Okay. And so existing utilities within 100 feet of the site would certainly be within the abutting lots. Okay, 4C16.
4C16.
4C17.
4C, okay, sorry, 4C17.
17, sorry.
No problem.
No, actually,
No,
there's
16 is up
two
there.
dealing with utilities, 15 and 16, and they're sort of the same answer for both of them.
Okay, gotcha. Yep.
Okay, 4C17.
Shape, size, height, and location of existing proposed structures within 200 feet of the site. Again, that's not something that I've seen asked to be waived since I've been here.
Okay, at 4C20.
Architectural renderings and color and floor plans. I have not seen anybody.
And so what's been provided is the drawing.
The hand drawing, yes, that's correct.
That's in the application.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and 4C23.
Storm drainage plan in accordance with section Appendix C, stormwater management. We have seen that, and I believe that Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Kohler have been in communication with Megan about drainage for this parcel. I don't know if that's acceptable to DPW or not.
Okay, and do I have any plan for drainage that shows me the 6-foot diameter perforated infiltration catch basin?
It
where-
shows-
Where
it's-
water forms at the lowest end of this site?
Correct. It shows its location, but we do not have a design schematic to support it.
Okay? And then I'm not sure what the other ones here that are followed by NA says, mean. I don't know why they're listed if it's NA. And I don't know whether the person who's here tonight for the applicant
Maybe
can
that's the
tell us.
reason why they're asking for the waiver, because they feel that it's not applicable.
Do we know what they are?
I don't know.
It looks like they're talking about
I don't
Appendix
have
A
my
road.
normal bag, folks, I'm sorry, my car ended up in the garage, and my planning bag with all my ordinances in it are there. So what's 4,
They-
24 and 25 that apparently they're saying are NA? I don't know whether they're NA because they're asking for a waiver, or because they've complied with them, do you know?
I believe they feel that it's non-applicable, but I'm not sure if they've met those conditions or if they just feel like they don't apply in this case.
Michael, do you have them?
Do.
What is 4C24?
4C24, the board may require that the engineer of record certify in writing that the drainage design and erosion control measures as proposed meet all town and state requirements and best management practices as promulgated by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Which is NA, because we don't have a drainage plan. All right, 4C25.
4C25, all proposals for development greater than 50 lots or 5 acres, whichever is lesser, shall include the base flood elevation
All
BFE
right, so
data.
that's not applicable, that's clearly not applicable, which they wouldn't need to ask. All right, what is 4D? We have a
4D
number
is
of paragraphs.
additional documents and information. 1, in the case of proposed condominium ownership.
Okay,
Moving on.
so it sounds like this is, 4D is probably not applicable at all. Okay. All right, but one of these has to do with drainage. All right. The reason I brought this forward is because I didn't ask Jonathan this question beforehand, but I suspected Jonathan's response was going to be, he has not seen these waiver requests before. And I think the board needs to make a decision, and I am not interested particularly in voting on these one by one. Either the board is going to find that these waiver requests are in general appropriate and continue to address this plan, or at which point they would be done for acceptance purposes only, subject to further vote, or the board considers these as a whole as being beyond the scope of what the waiver requests are intended to be, and are not accepted, at which point we do not have a plan. And we need to make that determination now. And I'm proceeding this way because we could spend an hour going through these individually, easily. And I think we need to get a board position on these waiver requests, which quite frankly, I will tell you, I had a hard time evaluating given the plan that we were given. Michael?
My first impression is that, perhaps there's some flexibility in the parking and landscaping, but otherwise, I don't really, assuming that the comment that we're kind of working out with TRC is not adequate to satisfy the requirement of a storm drainage plan, I would be inclined to deny all of them, except perhaps the parking and landscaping.
Anybody else?
Comments? You're
David?
asking for comments on the plan?
No, David, I want to
On the
deal with the number.
waivers.
The waivers. Phil?
Yeah, I just have a concern about the digital filing. I think the digital filing, I think we need the record to be able to be put in there, and we don't have the ability to take a drawing and put it in, and I think that should, something that should not be waived.
It's hard to comment on an incomplete plan. It feels very incomplete.
I need to tell you, I appreciate that coming in front of a planning board is an expensive proposition, and people often begin endeavors and they don't understand what they're walking into. You can probably ask anybody who just bought their first house whether they understood what they were getting
I
into.
just wanted to save the DA Taggart building. That was my main, when I started.
And
didn't-
I understand
I-
that's the building that we're talking about, but
Right.
unfortunately for the applicant, for you, Eric, the issue for me as the planning board is everything we do here is supposed to be in compliance with our rules, and what we do affects everything we do in the future. You heard us today talking earlier tonight, unfortunately, in the amount of time we've had to sit here tonight, talking about previous approvals that we've done on things and how it impacts posts. So I'm just going to say that I have a problem with the number. I think the explanations are pretty insufficient. I'm concerned about the digital filing because I can see pretty much anybody coming in here with a one-building proposition requesting a waiver of the digital filing provision. The zoning districts and boundaries within 1,000 feet of the site. I would have felt what we got instead was simply a copy of the zoning map, as I indicated, with an arrow to a site that's so small on the zoning map, you can't make it out. I suspect the black marker went over the boundary lines. The plan we have has got probably most of what is by this in that area attached, and if I had seen a plan that said, I could read, that said, we haven't done 1,000 feet, but the buildings are pretty condensed, and we've done 500 feet, I might be a little more comfortable with the waiver request. I see some other buildings on this plan, but not all of them. The vehicle parking, I think that's a pretty typical request for acceptance purposes only. I did hear the applicant talk about there are 10 other spaces, but they're not on the plan, so I don't think I can even consider them.
the issue of utilities, I think that there probably could have been a different proposal as to how to deal with that. Again, I appreciate there's a bigger site plan in front of me that might have something, but there was an underground conduit from the existing building that was shown on the plan, and I have to tell you, I saw a line that looked like it might be an overhead utility line from the existing building to the other building, but for the life of me, unless the line indicating 20 feet was the underground conduit, I had no idea where that was. And then notwithstanding other issues with the location of utilities on a site, the shape, size, height, and location of the existing proposed structures within 200 feet of the site, I think, I'm not sure the applicant understood what that was asking for, because it talks about the addition of the square foot building on this site, and the requirement is in regards to the 200 feet, and as I said, I think most of that information is here. And then architectural renderings in color and floor plans. The architectural renderings are commensurate with the simplicity of the project. I have a hard time understanding what that means, because I think most people that would come before us would indicate that, and I think what we have sometimes seen is a representation as, sometimes hand-done, as to the project, but there is a representation as, in writing, as to what was going to be done, so that we could tell. I appreciate that there was a drawing done, but I frankly had a hard time understanding it. The drainage plan we've already talked about, and the other ones are clearly not applicable. Now, there are members of this board that are much more knowledgeable than me about these things, but I wanted to bring that up right up front, because we do accept waivers quite often for purposes of acceptance only, and there are a number of them on this plan, and I want the board to be well aware of the fact that during the discussion, we're going to have to address them, in my opinion. So, if we have a discussion on them, because we need to accept the waiver request to find that the application is complete and ready for review. David, you looked like you were going to say something, so I seized upon it because I've been talking too long.
Perhaps another waiver that didn't get mentioned is that the applicant is showing access to a property by passing over land of others. And should that have been a waiver of some measure? Granted, the gravel's been there for 40 years, but we now have a plan that's documenting that this board is approving that you can have access into this parcel through land of others.
I own all the land around this, so what?
How do I know,
Well, you could,
I own 22 Main, I own 14 Depot, I own, I have access. I don't know why access to 9 churches now in
Because you don't, and we're going a little out of sync here, but this is very unusual, both as to the number of waiver requests and this issue, because the issue is, as you heard tonight, property gets conveyed, and it gets conveyed to other people, and if we don't do our job as a planning board, we can end up with site plans where people, in fact, have no access, and we have essentially been dealing with private property rights that someone might not be willing to relinquish, and we can create site plans.
Nine Church goes all the way to Depot. It goes from
Right.
Depot straight across to Church Street.
All right, but to David's point, I had a hard time figuring out where the access was. I was pretty limited to the little arrows back down there, which did appear to me to be off the actual site.
This plan has lines delineating edge of traveled way, and it crosses through land of others, whether it's the parcel to the west, or it's this paved travel way, which is the driveway into the town hall. But that's not a road.
Who owns that access?
I'm just saying it's town land with a driveway. It's not a road. And you're showing you have access into someone else's property. Is this board, happy with having a plan showing that?
That driveway, is it a road?
Pardon me?
Is that a driveway or a road?
I can't
don't
even
know.
really tell what I'm looking at, so I don't know. I'm
Just
not
says
trying to
paved
be
traveled
difficult,
way.
I'm just, because I am aware of the circumstances, and would like to be able to do something, but I need to tell you, I'm not sure that we have as a board what we need to find this application is complete and can be reviewed and dealt with. And this applicant has been sitting here for a long time, and we need to make a decision. I mean, I have an abutters list, and I can't tell where the abutters are to this plan. I don't know that I've ever seen a plan where I haven't been able to identify the abutters and where they are.
I believe they're illustrated by the tax parcel identification blocks adjacent the subject lot and in reference to the abutters list.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you for that, okay. I got it now.
And I've spoken with every single one, citizens. I've spoken with,
That's not, Eric, Eric,
Nobody
Mr.
has an
Fletcher,
issue.
I understand that, that's not the,
I just want to put it on a foundation and get, everybody's on my back about what an eyesore and when are you going to do something with it? Is that how you operate?
I understand that, but unfortunately, from a planning perspective, that's not what we have in front of us, and we're limited to what we have in front of us.
Well, our choices are to accept it and then come back with a revised plan and show it, or and tell them the things we want to have shown, or not accept it. I don't care, either way gets us to the same place. We don't like to accept if there's too many conditions. On the other hand, we can tell them what we need.
I'll meet whatever requirements you're asking me to. If you want more parking, I'll build more parking. I don't have a problem.
For now, Eric, I think procedurally, we need to get through the application being accepted. The intent, if I may, of this project initially is the situation of the building. What we're hoping to take away is acceptance of the position and location of the building by the board with respect to moving forward and grooming the plan and meeting all of the requests in the review and whatever other things the board needs to be illustrated on the plan. We're coming into winter. Mr. Fletcher's concerned based on comments from town people and whatnot about being an eyesore, a nuisance, a public hazard. All of this whole application, this site plan, everything hinges upon the acceptance of the placement of that structure as it now sits. It's in compliance with the setback. It's in compliance with the distance from other buildings, although we'll need to be...
Excuse me, I have to make a phone call, so Phil is going to be running the meeting at this point. I'm not leaving, but I need to make a phone call, and I didn't want to be rude.
In speaking with the lieutenant from the fire department, we can easily modify the building to meet fire code. It is respective of the side setback, so it's not in violation of the setback. If we know that we can move forward with the location of the building, and Mr. Fletcher knows that he can secure that building in that position, we can then move forward through continuance in, for lack of a better term, whipping this plan into shape, making it more presentable.
How long will that take?
Excuse me?
How long will it take to do that, to get the plan? If we continue this for, to next meeting?
A couple weeks at least, maybe, into the first meeting in November or something, would give us enough time to meet this lengthy list of requirements that I'm taking the board is going to need. But we need to know that that building position is gonna be accepted. Otherwise, this is all.
Well, why don't we treat this, you could treat this as a conceptual hearing on that.
What I was gonna suggest.
And then we continue the acceptance to let you work through the plan issues, as to whether the building location, now, until we have, as you know, until we have a final plan approved, it isn't, it's final but you certainly get an indication from the board on its concerns, which wanting to, and I'm willing to entertain that.
And the other thing we have to do then also is, because he's paid his filing fees, so we'd want to.
Right, continue, I don't want to deny it, I just want to
Right.
continue it. So that would be my suggestion, is we continue the acceptance hearing, but give the applicant some feedback on the location, that's all
Right.
we can do.
Right.
It's not final until we approve it.
All right, but the only question then is, how do we procedurally, if we treat this as a conceptual, how do we procedurally go through to more or less approve the location of the?
Well, location isn't approved until it's a final plan approval. I mean, the building's there.
Right.
So, until we approve the plan, it isn't final. We don't have a way of,
My understanding is that his concern about the location is so that you can set the building down.
yeah.
Am I correct?
Well, and he kind of does it at his own risk if we don't end up approving this. I just don't think we're likely to deny it.
Right.
It's just we want the plan brought up to date. So that's a risk the applicant can take, and I don't think he'd be unreasonable in taking that.
No, but I think the only thing that he have to make sure that he's aware of that, if he does put the building where it is, that it meets setbacks.
Yeah, which
Zoning.
the applicant's representative does.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Did it what, excuse me?
meets required setbacks.
Correct.
And the location,
Yep.
That we don't have to come back later on and have a request, with 3 feet from a setback, and we need to.
I'm gonna move that we continue the acceptance of this, and the applicant can work with Jonathan if he wants to tailor these waiver requests or get them within an acceptable level. But that we tell the applicant that based upon the information provided, that we think that is a suitable location for the building.
Right. And I would, assuming that you're not on top of any other underground utilities, or,
Correct.
which you're asking a waiver not to put on there, so we don't know if you're on top of it.
Perhaps you can answer this question. Mr. Fletcher can't get the necessary permits to excavate, pour your frost walls and your slab until approval from the board.
Well, that's why I thought if you could get it in for the next meeting, we'd
Right.
get moving.
Right.
I don't wanna,
So the plan has to be complete, even if we were to obtain a conditional approval, it's gonna have to be complete.
Yeah, we couldn't give you a conditional approval without accepting it.
Yeah.
David had a question?
I'll go back to the point I just made before. This board reviewed modifications to the front of a grocery store, simple vestibule on the front.
Right, why don't you just
But
keep
that plan that showed a vestibule on a building showed that, done by Todd Engineering, showed that the road into the parking lot went over land of others. And therefore, it was a condition that before the applicant got a building permit, in this case, put the building down, that there had to be a formal easement,
Well, he can cure that.
which Todd did, that showed that there was a right-of-way over land of others for a driveway to exist. And so I see this exact same situation here,
But he can do that easement deed from.
but it was a
lot
condition
coverage.
laid upon by this board before a building permit was
Okay,
brought.
but I guess the question, though, that I have, my recollection, okay, and I could be wrong, there is a driveway that goes into the existing structure that's there now, the old town hall portion. So you already have a driveway in there. If you've put the building down to the left side of that driveway, you already have the access to the property.
No, the plan, this is easily curable. All Ms. Fletcher has to do is an easement from himself as owner of one lot to
Right.
himself. I mean, he could have had it done by the time, in the amount of time we spent talking about it.
Right.
But that cures it. But the problem is showing an access on a plan for which there's no deeded right, and then it gets enshrined, and that's the problem. But he can make that go away. Mr. Todd probably has a form for it that would work. So, wouldn't waste time in that one, just do it.
Now, other question I have, though, procedurally, if we're going to treat this has been presented as an application, there's an abutters list, notices have gone out. If we're going to treat this as a conceptual, do we have a public hearing or don't we have a
We've
public?
done this before, we've allowed them to proceed.
Okay, so if there's any
It's a
further-
notice hearing, so you can, it's a lesser.
Well, I just want to address it with the board, the procedure, so that it's clear what we're doing.
I'm going to go back to my question before. If we continue this for 2 weeks, would that be enough time? If it's not, then we've got to push it back. I don't want to, I love seeing it, but I don't need to see it more times.
I can speak from a field aspect. Within the next couple of weeks, I could probably get the field work done. But it's seeming like this is a pretty lofty list of things to comply with. When would the next meeting be then, if not 2 weeks?
Third meeting would be 17th of November. The 27th October, 10th of November, 17th of November.
Say the
10th of November and the
Probably give us
17th of
more
November?
Yeah,
time.
because the next week's Thanksgiving. So
Right.
Do you have any input on that?
So I can't put this building down on a foundation, is basically what you're saying.
Well,
All my contract, everybody who's lined up to do that, I really thought it is what it is.
Not until we
we can't tell you we can't do it, we just don't. Yeah.
get approval. We can't get the building permit to do that until the building department has approval from the planning board of the plan.
It doesn't sound like you do this in 2 weeks, that's what you're saying. That's pushing it too much.
Yeah.
Disregard what I want.
You want to try for the 2 weeks, though?
It doesn't sound.
Well, if we can't make it,
Just a
we'll be,
reminder, the 2 weeks, you need it a week before, right? I just-
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Comments.
Oh.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
just
no
want to
way.
remind everybody, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Right, we all
Give
think
us a
It
week.
yes.
doesn't mean 2 weeks, you should, I'm just.
is it a week or is it actually
I
10
don't know, that's
days?
not-
You know, in our luck, we'll get early snow this year. That building's not getting on a foundation then. I mean, once my plows go on, I don't have time to work. I have time to work on this building now. I set time now. I set time a month ago, and so it's gonna sit there all winter. And everybody's gonna
Thank you,
complain to
Mr.
me.
Fletcher. I don't think we want to go through the movement, the fact that the town hall employees had to approach you because work was starting to get done without permits. This board is trying to accommodate you. I asked this board to address the waivers first up, so you would know tonight what was happening and not be here for quite a while. No one here is happy that things are not getting finished in a timetable, but we are not responsible for people's timetables. We have our own timetable and our own requirements for rules. And I apologize to persons, public applicants who think that we are conducting ourselves
in a way that's not in compliance with the rules that we have to follow by our own ordinance and by state laws. That's all we're trying to do here. And we appreciate that there's a building out back that has been moved that something should be done with, and we're trying to accommodate that. And what I'm hearing from the people who are helping you get this work done, that to come back on November 10th with what would be minimally required by any other applicant before this board, that November 10th is probably a little ambitious, and that November 17th, which is only a week further in time, might give them enough breathing room to get done what needs to be done. So I apologize, especially because I think I turned this meeting over to Phil and just took it back over. But we would like to see this done. So the question, I believe, is out there as to November 10th is too tight, so we have an opportunity to continue this to the 17th. Thank you for recognizing me.
You're welcome.
I guess I'd leave that up to the applicant.
Right.
Isn't the 10th 2 meetings out?
Well, that's right.
So if we're trying to get it more than 1 week of flex time to get the plan updated, November 10th might be the most appropriate.
I think the point was that what we need here at the planning board staff actually will need to be in here more like November 1st. And so the question for the applicant was, and he was aware of that when he was pondering what could be done by November 1st.
Okay.
So the 17th would be the soonest.
I'll make that motion.
About the public hearing? I'll leave it up to you since you took it.
I'm turning around because I just sort of started and I heard.
I'm going to move that we continue the acceptance hearing.
Just want to see if there was any members of the
No,
public.
we're not even in public session yet because we haven't gotten to acceptance. So I'll make that motion.
Yes.
Just
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous.
Can we go home now?
I don't know, do we have anything left?
All right, so Phil, thank you for that, and I apologize for speaking up.
That's
Jonathan,
okay.
is there any other business that we need to address as a board tonight?
Did we do all of our business? We did minutes, is there?
We already did minutes.
Motion to
Well,
adjourn?
what's the exit?
No, that's not, is there a second to the motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It was a long night, and I thank people for staying.